So this kid gets home from school, right? It was supposed to be just another normal day, but something was off. He gets a letter, and the moment he opens it, Kuyu Haruto gets teleported to a whole other dimension. The boy had no clue what was about to go down. The person who pulled him here starts talking in his head. Turns out, it's a version of himself from 10 years in the future. Future him warns that Haruto is going to become the greatest space-time mage ever, but it'll be too late. So he figured he had to contact his past self to speed things up. Now, he has to go to the F-rank dungeon in Shinjuku, all by himself to talk to his future self again. Back home, the protagonist wonders, does any of this make sense? And then he remembers his day, his horrible day at school. At Haruto's school, he basically got thrown around and used his face to mop the floor. Why? Because of his classmates. They were making fun of him, saying it was just a basic spell and he shouldn't have gotten hit. The poor guy was pissed, but was too weak to even get up. Haruto just stood there and asked if they were done. He wanted them to give back something they took from him. The guys ordered him to go buy snacks for everyone. He did, but he forgot the soda, and that was a big mistake. Because of that, his punishment was getting a few fire spells thrown at him. The bully tossed another attack and almost nailed Haruto. At least this time, the poor guy didn't get his face dragged on the floor. Their little innocent fun got cut short when a girl showed up, and she was furious. This is Shinonome, and she's on the disciplinary committee. They gave back what they took from Haruto, but he wasn't quick enough to catch it. It fell, and his phone screen cracked, just like his reputation. She ran over to him to see if he was okay, but he told her to back off. If she hangs around him, people will start treating her the same way they treat him. The girl doesn't really argue, but she's super worried about him. Frustrated with being so weak, Haruto tells his friend that they can't be like they were when they were kids anymore. At school, everyone would laugh at him behind his back, whispering about how he was the weakest kid there and wondering how he even got enrolled. He only got in because of his parents' connections, and sadly, they're not around anymore. They had the bad luck of being on a plane that had a malfunction. After that awful day, Haruto made up his mind. He was going to the dungeon his future self told him about. He brought the letter, and the thing started talking to him, guiding him to a blank wall. He had to press the letter against the wall, and just like magic, it opened up and revealed a secret passage. Inside the room, a blue stone was just floating, held in place by chains. It's a skill cube. If you touch it, you get an ability. Haruto walked up to it and saw his own pathetic reflection right before he touched it. The stone just zapped his hand and turned red. Lines of energy started flowing all over the walls, and then the ceiling busted open. All the concrete blocks in the room got sucked upwards and formed a giant stone golem. You could see it even through all the dust. Haruto was frozen stiff with fear. There was no way he could fight that thing. When the creature moved, it was crazy fast, too. It hit him with an attack so quick he couldn't even process it. He got slammed into a wall, with the letter from the future on one side and his broken phone on the other. The photo on his screen caught his eye. It was his family, the only people who ever loved him and made him feel okay. Then, the letter started talking to him again. The voice in the letter loved him and cared about him too. And maybe, just maybe, this person loves him the most, because it is him, his future self. Will he just accept it? Will he lose everything all over again, right here in this dark place? Haruto remembered school, that humiliation. He couldn't let it go. He had to get his revenge. The golem attacked furiously. Haruto reached for his sword, but he was hit. A system message popped up. Hidden mission requirements have been met. Adventurer's death has been canceled. Then our boy just explodes with energy. A massive aura blasts out everywhere and his body starts healing itself. Concept of space-time has been acquired. Haruto wasn't the same loser he was before, wreathed in blue lightning and with a renewed appearance. A system window reveals that he has finally acquired space-time magic. The future voice apologizes for not warning him about the trap beforehand. He explains that space-time magic will only be discovered in 10 years, making it an exclusive skill. The young man asks if he really came from the future, and his older self confirms that the tutorial has begun. Without wasting time, the golem attacks again, but now the boy is ready to fight back. With that, he dodges the monster's blow with an impressive speed he didn't have before. The protagonist realizes his body feels much lighter and wonders if it's the effect of the skill. Then the letter says it will teach him how to fight, telling him not to see with his eyes, but to feel. The future voice explains that the boy must feel the flow of time that dominates the world. Concentrating, the boy repeats his older self's words, trying to understand the power. The entity says it knows he can do it, because in the end, they are the same person. Seeing this, the stone monster prepares an even stronger attack to crush him. However, the protagonist closes his eyes and concentrates, trying to feel the flow around him. The boy remains still as the creature's giant fist descends toward him. He tries to feel the way time flows in the world, just as his older self instructed. With his eyes glowing intensely, the boy snaps his fingers, looking more confident. The creature attacks again, but the young man leaps back, escaping the blow by a hair's breadth. He then smiles confidently and declares that he's going to use space-time magic. Using his new speed, he runs up the golem's arm, leaving it unable to react. At that moment, a system window appears, and he uses the physical acceleration skill. The boy springs forward like a coil, suddenly gaining incredible speed. He climbs the monster at high velocity, looking like a bolt of blue light in the darkness. Reaching the top, he leaps and realizes just how impressive his new power is. Then, he plunges his energized blade directly into the golem's weak spot. The boy lands on the enemy's head, his sword embedded up to the hilt in its core. From within, the stone creature's core begins to slowly shatter. At this, a flash of purple light blinds everything around, signaling the monster's end. The creature then breaks into countless fragments that fly throughout the room. After destroying the enemy, the young man lands safely on the floor of the secret chamber. Looking back, he sees the remaining pieces of the golem turning to dust. A system window appears, showing that he leveled up 4 times and earned a lot of credits. Faced with the rewards, the entity questions if he finally believes him now. Then, the letter calls him a little germ, his loser nickname at school. The boy holds the envelope and admits he trusts him a little, and the voice says it's time for the next phase. As he leaves the room, the young man asks if there's anything else to do, and the letter confirms there is. His future self says they need to go to Rina Shinonome because she will die today. The protagonist stops abruptly, shocked by the revelation, and wonders what that means. Completely confused, he demands an explanation for what he just heard. Then, the voice confirms that his childhood friend Rine is indeed in danger. She's going to enter a dungeon with friends and die to an extra boss. Stopping in his tracks, his older self's voice instructs him to save that girl. Then the being asks him to use his power to alter her destiny. With determination in his eyes, the voice calls him the Mage of Spacetime and tells him to act. The future voice details that the girl will die today in the rank D dungeon of Ikebukuro. The entity explains that the cause will be a surprise rank C extra boss that will appear. The future self continues, saying her group will call for help, but no one will arrive in time. Furious with the explanation, the young man yells at the voice to shut up and runs towards the dungeon. He then angrily questions why his older self didn't warn him about this much sooner. The letter reminds him that he hates getting involved with others, and because of that, acts indifferent. Arriving at the dungeon, the boy comes face to face with a monster, but ignores it and presses on. The voice taunts him, calling him by his nickname Germ to test his resolve. With that, the being tells him to stop pretending he doesn't care about anything and accept his feelings. The entity says he can change the world with the power he now holds in his hands. The boy pushes forward and cuts down all the goblins in his path at once. The voice finishes by saying that the future depends solely on the actions he takes now. The protagonist tells his future self to shut up and slides across the floor with his aura activated. He then firmly declares that he'll do what his heart tells him, no matter what. Satisfied, the entity says that was the answer it was hoping for and will reward him for it. Meanwhile, in the central section of the dungeon, a large explosion of energy occurs. The force of the impact hurls Reen backward violently, unable to react. She hits the ground hard, and her teammates look on in horror at the scene. From a distance, we see the girl on the ground as a friend screams her name in despair. The young woman remains unconscious, fallen and injured on the floor. With difficulty, she opens one eye and stares at the being that attacked her moments before. Before them, a knight in black armor appears, holding a giant sword. Then, a window reveals that he is the rank C extra boss, the terrifying Dark Sentinel. Frightened, her friends panic while one girl tries to call for help. Another young woman with a staff tries to rally the group to fight together. However, one of the boys backs away in fear, saying he doesn't want to fight and end up dead. But the monster gives them no time to argue and moves into attack again. Its giant blade descends with devastating force towards the students. The blow strikes the ground, causing a massive explosion of purple energy at the location. After the dust settles, we see Rina, breathless and exhausted. In her eyes, the reflection shows all her friends defeated on the dungeon floor. Looking ahead, the girl sees that she's the only one still able to stand. Her companions are all severely injured and can no longer continue the fight. With his last ounce of strength, one of them begs the young woman to save him from this situation. Without hesitation, the girl turns and faces the Dark Sentinel for one last attempt. With a battle cry, she charges with her flaming spear to attack the monster. The blow strikes the creature's armor head-on, but it seems to have no effect. In response, the boss unleashes a wave of blue energy that easily repels repels her. Completely shocked, the young woman realizes her strongest attack was useless. Seeing its chance, the Dark Knight raises its sword for the final blow. The giant blade descends rapidly toward the girl, who is defenseless on the ground. In desperation, she screams for help, and a skill window suddenly appears. In that instant, the protagonist appears and stops the blow using chains of energy. The boy asks his friend if she's okay now. Shocked, the girl recognizes him and can't believe what she's seeing. With tears in her eyes, the girl still can't believe he's really there. The boy shields her with his body and tells her to stay back while he holds the chains. He then turns to the Dark Sentinel and realizes his chains won't last much longer. With a powerful blow, the monster breaks free, and the young man leaps away to avoid being hit. He lands safely at a distance from the enemy, preparing for combat. The creature attacks again, but the boy uses his speed to dodge under the blow. Getting close enough, he manages to block the giant sword with his own blade. He spots a weak point in the monster's armor and aims his attack right there. However, as he strikes, he notices the boss's armor is much tougher than it looked. The force of the impact pushes him back, and he struggles not to be thrown far. The enemy's sword keeps pressing against his, and sparks fly everywhere. He is finally thrown back, and the monster chips a piece off our boy's sword. Seeing this, the boy realizes the boss is preparing some kind of ranged attack with the gem. The gem glows with a dark energy and begins to crack, releasing immense power. Then the monster fires a massive purple energy beam toward the young man. The creature's attack causes a gigantic explosion of purple energy throughout the room, but the boy uses physical acceleration to dodge the deadly beam by a hair's breadth. With his eyes glowing, he understands that his sword alone won't be enough. He remembers how his blade couldn't even scratch the monster's armor. From this, he concludes that there must be a weak point somewhere in the enemy's defense. Then, the young man realizes the weak point is the head, and that he needs to aim his attack there. The voice warns him that the sword is useless, but the boy charges forward to attack anyway. He smiles and says he already knows that as he uses material restoration magic. With that, the broken sword begins to reconstruct itself in front of his face, but the monster prepares a dark energy attack. However, at that instant, the sword strikes the boss's head, stunning it for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, the boy attacks with everything he has, causing a blue energy explosion. The blow lands squarely, and the monster's head begins to crack from the impact. He lands safely, as the voice says he managed to change fate. In front of his friend, the hero looks at the defeated enemy on the dungeon floor. Still on the ground, the girl looks up, shocked by the protagonist's abilities. With firm steps, the girl gets up and walks toward the boy, wanting explanations. She keeps walking and angrily questions how he managed to pull that off. Completely confused, his friend shouts again, wanting to understand what happened. Pointing at her savior, the young woman demands that he explain himself immediately. But before anything else, the girl says she's going to thank him for saving the group. With a slightly flushed face, she shouts her thanks for saving her and her companions. The boy gets a little embarrassed by the thanks and says it was nothing. Then, the young woman gets very close and asks what kind of magic he used. At this, the future voice warns him not to comment on space-time magic. The girl eyes him suspiciously, and the boy is at a loss for what to say. Changing the subject, the boy asks her to keep it a secret that he was the one who saved her. The girl is shocked by the request, and he explains that he doesn't want to draw attention to himself. The voice tells him to keep stalling, and his friend is startled by the sound. His friend asks if that voice was his, but the young man denies it immediately. The entity apologizes, but the boy promises to get revenge on it later for this. Flustered, the boy doesn't know what to say to his friend after the confusion. He then makes up a story about testing a sword skill that's still incomplete. Because of this, the young man desperately begs her to keep it a secret for now. With a blushing face, the girl seems to consider her friend's proposal. Then, with a suggestive look, she asks if this is a secret just between the two of them. The protagonist confirms, somewhat confused by his companion's unexpected reaction. With a smile, his friend finally agrees, and the boy sighs in relief for having escaped. Back at school, the protagonist narrates that he prevented the death that was foretold for Rini. He also reflects that at the same time, he gained overwhelming power and magic. The boy remembers that the past cannot be changed as the class bell rings, but now, the young man concludes that with his new powers, he can finally change the future. At that moment, a classmate calls him by his nickname Germ to provoke him. We see a trio of bullies laughing and mocking our hero for no apparent reason. Their leader says he heard the boy went to the dungeon and saw him running from it. They continue to mock him, saying he doesn't disappoint for having attracted an extra boss. The bully says a friend got hurt and went to a hospital with a hefty bill. With a smile, he demands money to not tell anyone he saw the boy there. Even surrounded by the bullies, our hero remains silent, not responding. Annoyed, one of the guys creates a fireball and threatens the young man with his offensive magic. Calmly, the protagonist firmly responds that he doesn't want to be attacked by them. The bully is surprised by the response and seems to not believe what he just heard. With a dark look, the boy repeats that he doesn't want to and calls them pathetic trash. Furious, the group's leader lunges at him with a clenched fist, ready to strike. But the protagonist narrates that, thanks to the increase in his abilities, everything has changed. Now he can track his enemies' every move with perfect precision. With that, the boy dodges and counterattacks their blows with incredible speed. In an instant, all three bullies are on the ground, completely defeated. Shocked, they look at the boy and wonder what the hell happened to him. The boy glares at them coldly and warns them never to show their faces in front of him again. He then takes out a lighter while holding the bullies' items and asks if they know what will happen if they disobey. Terrified, the bullies point at the boy, unsure what to say about the threat. With the lighter lit, he seals the promise between them in a very intimidating way. He repeats his gentle request with a look that makes it clear what will happen if they fail. Terrified, the three boys nod in agreement without daring to say another word. Relieved, the young man sighs and decides it's best to get back to the classroom. In class, he wonders if the next lesson will be the magical element measurement. The teacher announces they will begin the semester's measurement and calls the boy's name. Our hero stands up politely and answers the master's call for the test. He remembers that last time his magical power was practically zero in everything, but now, as a space-time mage, he wonders what the new result will be. Walking to the front, the boy thinks about using his new magic just to test it. He then touches the magic mirror under the watchful eye of the class teacher. Closing his eyes, the boy concentrates and begins to release his bluish energy. His eyes glow with an intense light as he activates his secret ability. A bright light explodes from the mirror, leaving the teacher completely shocked by the scene. He's completely paralyzed, not understanding what's happening. Then, a huge explosion of blue energy occurs and blinds everyone in the classroom. The force is so great that the magic mirror cracks and shatters into pieces. In total shock, the master yells that this is impossible and can't be true. Scratching his head, the boy bitterly regrets having used so much power at once. Our hero realizes that instead of being discreet, he ended up drawing a lot of attention. Meanwhile, his friend Rene tries to hold back her laughter at her friend's predicament. After class, the young man starts hearing various whispers wherever he goes in the hallways. The students comment that he destroyed the device and has power above rank A. The protagonist notices that the comments about him have completely changed overnight. He then walks home, feeling more tired than usual from all the attention. But suddenly, a familiar voice calls his name, and the boy turns to look. The young man is confused and looks around, trying to figure out where the call came from. The mysterious voice says it's right there, and he still doesn't understand what's happening. Then, something appears out of nowhere right in front of him. Completely frightened, the boy screams, not understanding what the hell is going on. Suddenly, a cute pink creature appears and reveals itself as the mysterious voice. With a look of astonishment, he finally recognizes the voice that was calling him. The young man asks if that is his future self and why it has such a strange appearance. The doll explains that it used space-time magic to possess a stuffed animal, but at that moment, the entity says they have an emergency and need to act very quickly. The plushie then says there's no time for small talk now. His future self reveals that the Chaos Dragon has appeared much earlier than expected. Our hero tenses up and asks about this dragon. Gritting his teeth in fear, the boy discovers it's a very dangerous creature. It's an alpha-level monster, marked for extermination, that has attacked several people. The cute creature explains that the beast destroyed the region's adventurers guild, and with that, the beast caused an unprecedented catastrophe, leaving many injured. The entity says that's exactly what happened in its original timeline. Now they need to defeat it, or another tragedy will occur as history predicted. The boy is flabbergasted by the revelation of the impending catastrophe. He then suggests calling the Adventurers Guild to request a hunting squad. At this, the doll interrupts him and says there's no more time, as it's already too late. The young man is confused, and his future version reveals that the dragon is already right here. At that moment, the gigantic Chaos Dragon appears, roaring in front of them. The protagonist panics and asks why the creature isn't in a dungeon. His future self explains that this is a species that travels in the open. At this rate, he realizes the school will be completely damaged by the monster. Outside, the other students walk calmly, unaware of the threat. A group of students is chatting casually until the sky suddenly darkens. Looking up, they see the beast and wonder why it's there. The monster's glowing red eye stares down at the students with pure malice. Terrified, the students start running desperately for their lives. A blonde girl shouts for the normal students to evacuate the area immediately. Soon after, she and her squad of mages prepare for the battle about to begin. The boy recognizes the group and says that's the Student Council of Mages. A huge pink magic circle then forms on the ground, preparing a powerful attack. Several smaller circles appear around the beast, setting the stage for the strike. With that, the students launch a combined magical attack directly at the monster. The group's leader shouts that the beast will not set foot in the school. Then, her powerful pink magic hits the dragon head-on, causing a very intense light. But, despite being hit squarely, the giant monster seems to have felt nothing. A huge explosion illuminates the entire sky, and it seems the threat has finally been contained. The team members then celebrate, believing they have managed to defeat the beast. With a confident smile, the blonde girl believes her team handled the job. But to everyone's shock, the attack didn't work, and they can't believe what they're seeing. The evil creature seems to absorb the attack and prepares a devastating retaliation. Next, the dragon fires a purple energy beam towards the young mages. In the blink of an eye, the entire student council is completely defeated by the monster. His future version says this is no surprise, as they are just students. The cute creature calls the boy's name in a serious voice. Then, the doll spits a pink goo right in our protagonist's face. The young man screams, asking what the hell it's doing with that attitude. His future version explains that it's a dragon scent to attract the beast. The scent will make the monster chase him and ignore everyone else around. With that, the entity says it's now his turn to finally defeat the dragon. The monster's red eye focuses on him, and the gigantic creature charges in his direction. At this, the doll desperately shouts for the boy to run as fast as possible. The boy then runs for his life while the beast tries to crush him from behind. He then looks back, worried, hearing his friend ask the other girl if she's okay. Looking back, the young man sees Rina and the other council members defeated on the ground. His future version asks if he doesn't want the girl to get involved in this battle anymore. The boy confirms, and the entity tells him to go, as this will reduce the chances of being noticed. With that, the hero activates physical acceleration and starts to flee at high speed. The giant monster then roars and fiercely pursues him through the city streets. At that moment, the young man lures the beast to the Nakano train station in Tokyo for a fight. The protagonist confirms the place is empty, and the entity instructs him to jump the fence. After jumping the fence, he turns and asks about the creature's characteristics. The cute creature says its element is darkness, and its breath can defeat enemies. It then explains that it's resistant to physical attacks, and the young man understands why. The entity confirms and explains that because it's not intelligent, the scent worked to attract it. The boy agrees, and the entity says that 500,000 credits were a good investment. Shocked, the boy asks if he heard the absurd amount of money spent correctly. Furious, he grabs the doll upon learning the amount came from his account without permission, and he asks how his future version managed to find out his bank password, even though the reason is pretty obvious. Completely disheartened by the situation, the young man thinks this is all crazy. His partner tells him not to worry, as he'll get the money back quickly. He explains that the money is just a bonus, and the real prize is a skill stone. With this stone, he'll get a new and powerful time and space magic. The protagonist swallows hard and tells them to continue the plan from where they left off. The doll reveals that because it's young, the monster's weakness, its core, will be exposed. But before he could say the location, the beast roars and attacks them with full force. The force of the blow is so great that our hero is thrown far away. Then, the cute creature yells for him to be careful, and the boy thanks him for the useless advice. At that moment, the dragon fires a giant purple energy beam in his direction. A huge explosion happens, and the young man tries to defend himself as best he can with his sword. The boy manages to dodge and says he narrowly avoided the creature's devastating blow. But suddenly he notices something strange and gets a look of total shock. The pink explosion happens exactly where he was standing just seconds before. The shockwave is so powerful it destroys everything around with incredible force. Amidst all the smoke, the giant monster lands on the ground and observes the damage done. With a malicious grin, the beast believes it has won and its chest begins to glow. Out of nowhere, a blue glow appears and a sword slash hits the dragon right in the chest. The creature is confused, not understanding what happened, and the young man begins to explain. He reveals that what the beast saw was just his image from half a second ago. His partner says he used space-time magic to dodge and is proud. Without wasting time, the boy leaps towards the monster to attack its weak spot. He finally spots the dragon's core glowing in the chest of the enormous creature. With a determined look, our hero shouts that he has finally found what he was looking for. Then with all his strength, he prepares a devastating blow towards the core. The sword strikes the beast's weak spot head-on, causing a very intense glow. The young man says something doesn't feel right, and despite the hit, he has a bad feeling. Suddenly, the beast's body dissolves into purple energy and sucks our hero inside. Completely confused, the boy wonders what the hell is happening around him. Next, the monster materializes again from that strange smoke. Annoyed, he complains that his future version never mentioned this bizarre ability. The entity explains that the beast's body can turn into poison, and that he needs to be... With a sideways glance, the boy asks to be informed of things before the fight starts. The doll then begins to explain that the dragon uses its energy to create a body. With that, the creature finishes regenerating and roars with all its evil might. Then, the purple smoke transforms into several bats that fly towards him. Frightened, the protagonist says it's impossible for that monster to be a hatchling. His partner confirms that a strong enemy that was supposed to appear in 5 years has shown up now. The young man questions why such a great threat appeared so early in the story. The entity replies that maybe it's because he changed the future and that he must defeat it. Sighing, our hero complains that his future self is dumping all the responsibility on him. At this, the swarm of bats flies in his direction, leaving him completely in shock. With no time to lose, he activates his physical acceleration to escape the swarm of creatures. In the air, he manages to quickly slice one of the dark bats that were chasing him. At this, the doll notices that the small dragons don't turn into poison when defeated. The entity advises him to defeat the minions first, and then wait for the right moment to strike. The young man lands on the tracks and agrees with the plan, saying that's exactly what he'll do. Then, he starts to charge energy in his feet, preparing for the next action. With a determined look, the boy prepares to put the plan into action and end the fight. At that moment, he charges forward at an impressive speed, leaving a trail of light behind him. With his sword in hand, he cuts down all the dark creatures that appear in his path. The hero continues his relentless attack and destroys several of the monsters with his blows. His partner observes the fight and calculates that he should level up about 3 times from this battle. Panting, the boy stops for a moment to breathe and believes he has defeated all the smaller enemies. But suddenly, the main creature reappears at the end of the tracks with its core glowing. Our boy is shocked by what he sees in front of him. Taking advantage of the distraction, the dragon fires a devastating energy beam in their direction. A gigantic explosion occurs at the location, engulfing everything around in its flames. Hit squarely by the explosion, our hero is thrown far away by the impact, but the creature doesn't stop and already starts charging another shot of dark energy. With wide eyes, the young man realizes he won't have time to dodge the blow. Annoyed, the boy complains that he barely had time to breathe, and here comes another powerful attack. A second explosion lights up everything, but the result seems a bit different from the last. He then complains that he spent too much energy on the minions earlier in the battle. The boy realizes that at this rate, he only has a few more minutes before he runs out of strength. With that, he decides he needs to hit the monster's core before it's too late. Suddenly, the protagonist is surprised to notice something strange coming from the enemy. The monster then starts to fly high, and his partner warns that his attack won't reach it. In the sky, the beast roars and prepares to fire another devastating attack from above. Desperate, the young man wonders what he can do in this complicated situation. He then looks to the side and seems to have an idea upon spotting the stationary train cars. The hero realizes he can use the train to gain the necessary height for the attack. With a determined look, he focuses on the train cars and comes up with a new attack plan. The young man realizes he can use the cars to reach the necessary height to attack. With that in mind, he prepares to use the trains as a launching platform. His partner asks what the plan is and says the situation is getting very dangerous. Without giving an explanation, the boy grabs the doll tightly, scaring the creature. He then starts running and says his partner is coming with him to help with his strategy. With great agility, the hero jumps from one container to another to gain more height. Even at the top, his partner warns that he still can't reach the monster, and the boy agrees. The protagonist squeezes the cute creature and explains that's why he needs a little extra help. Then, he throws his partner like a cannonball towards the dragon, which is left confused. Next, the young man activates a time and space magic and summons a magic chain. The chain's attached to the doll, which is left hanging in the air, not understanding what's happening. The hero uses his partner as a stepping stone and leaps to reach the gigantic beast in the sky. Seeing him approach, the dragon roars and prepares for an immediate counterattack. With a determined look, the boy repeats the magic to stop the beast before it turns to poison. The magic chain fully forms and lunges towards the flying creature. With this, the magic traps the dragon, and the boy explains he can only hold it for a few seconds, but he guarantees that this short time is more than enough for him to end the fight. With his sword glowing intensely, he prepares the final blow towards the monster. The attack strikes the beast's core head-on, causing a very strong glow on impact. With a focused look, the hero uses all his strength to destroy the enemy's weak spot. The dragon's core begins to crack under the pressure of the sword and releases a purple energy. Suddenly, the time and space chains break, freeing the giant creature. Even so, our protagonist doesn't give up and continues to push the sword with all his might. In its final moments, explodes. The beast roars in pain as its body begins to dissolve. Finally, the core shatters into several pieces, and the monster is defeated once and for all. A large explosion occurs, and his partner falls to the ground after being thrown. The young man's sword also can't withstand the pressure and breaks after the final blow. Tired and panting, the hero finally relaxes after the intense battle just ended. Soon after, a system message confirms that he has defeated the dangerous Chaos Dragon. Relieved, the boy carefully observes the rewards that appear before him. The system informs him that he leveled up 15 times and earned over 800,000 credits. He also receives the Chaos Dragon's Fang and a recommendation to rank up as an adventurer. His partner congratulates him on the victory and says he expected it, since they are the same person. But right after, the cute creature gets furious and complains about being used as a trampoline in the fight. The young man ignores his partner's scolding and focuses on the notifications that appeared. At this, the system informs him that his space-time magic leveled up 20 times and he learned new skills. He also gained a new passive skill that increases his potential power by 50%. Despite the anger, the cute creature says it will forgive him as they avoided a catastrophe. Suddenly, his partner hears the sound of sirens and realizes the police are coming, saying they should get out of there. The protagonist agrees and says no one can find out they were at the location. The doll then jumps onto the boy's shoulder, who is surprised they agree on something. Without wasting time, his hero leaps over a fence to quickly escape the area. After fleeing, they finally reach a safe place to rest. In the apartment, the boy sits on the sofa with a bag of food in his hand. He opens the wrapper of a sandwich and seems to remember something important. With that, the young man asks his partner if he needs to eat something too. The doll sighs and asks how it would eat, being just a cloth doll. The boy retorts that common sense dictates a talking creature is strange enough already. Then, the boy has an idea and stops eating his snack before the first bite. The boy gets up from the sofa and leaves the cute creature there, watching suspiciously. He then goes to the table and fills a glass with water for someone special. The young man places the glass in front of a picture frame and greets his deceased family. The creature complains and asks its companion not to mock it like that. The hero turns and asks why he would do that, and the doll replies that they are the same person. His partner looks at the little girl's photo and thinks he shouldn't talk about Ria right now. He decides he will tell the truth when the boy is stronger as a time mage. At that moment, the boy remembers they found a material to create a new weapon. A system notification appears and shows the Chaos Dragon's Fang as a reward. His partner remembers that his sword broke, so the timing is perfect for a new one. The creature tells him not to go to class the next day, as they are going to create a new weapon. The next day, the young man arrives at the Adventurers Guild and feels intimidated by the place. The boy is impressed by the size of the building as his partner climbs onto his shoulder. With a smug smile, the creature says he can thank it for this later. The hero enters the building and thinks about going home as soon as he finishes what he needs to do there. Inside the guild, a voice calls for adventurer number 23, and the boy realizes it's him. He goes to the receptionist and explains that he completed a dungeon and wants to check the results. As he hands over his card, the attendant thinks he looks too weak to be an adventurer, but with a professional smile, the woman agrees and says she will check his information. Then she takes the young man's ID card and prepares to look at the data. The woman inserts the card into a terminal, and his information appears on a holographic screen. The system begins to load all the adventurer's data for the receptionist's reevaluation. Next, she asks him to place his hand on the screen to confirm his identity and check his rank. The hero obeys and places his hand on the screen, waiting for the machine to complete the verification. Suddenly, the attendant's eyes widen in total surprise at what appears on the display. Shocked, she sees that his rank has gone from I to C in a single day and can't believe it. Trembling, the woman wonders if the machine isn't malfunctioning or has a serious problem. The protagonist notices that her reaction is drawing everyone's attention in the place. Not wanting trouble, he decides to test his new material restoration skill. With a smile, he calls the woman and says the identity verification is complete. Confused, the attendant looks at the screen, which now shows rank E, and wonders what happened. The young man pretends not to know anything and asks the woman if there was a problem. Playing it cool, the woman returns the card and says it was nothing, but finds it all very strange. He takes his card back and thanks the attendant for her service at the counter. The boy then reveals that he used his restoration magic to alter the system screen. His partner praises him for the clever move, and the hero says he just avoided changing the future. In front of an elevator, he asks the doll which way he should go now. The cute creature instructs him to take the elevator to reach their next next destination. Inside the cabin, the boy waits patiently as the elevator ascends to the correct floor. The doors open, and he steps out of the cubicle, finding himself in a new, mysterious corridor. Arriving at a door, he discovers that only rank A adventurers can enter, but his partner assures him that this is not a problem and he doesn't need to worry. The doll then transforms into a glowing card and falls into the protagonist's hand. Surprised, the young man wonders how it turned into a card, and the object tells him to use it. The boy hesitates and remembers that the reader is a security device, but the card insists. Without further ado, the boy touches the card to the security reader, which beeps. With the door open, the young man is excited to start synthesizing his new weapon and a time item. At this, someone asks who he is, thinking it's a school field trip. The young man faces the man who questioned him and prepares to answer his serious question. Calmly, he denies being on a school trip and says he came to synthesize a new weapon. Surprised by the answer, the scientist is speechless for a moment and stares at him doubtfully. He then asks if the boy's adventurer rank is higher than A for him to be inside. We learn that this man is Tokumun Shiroyama, the director of the Weapon Synthesis Institute. Tokumun scratches his head and says the boy looks like a rank F, but he couldn't have bypassed security. At that moment, the hero's partner whispers for him to show the item he got earlier. The boy then explains that he obtained a rare material from an enemy and wants to strengthen his weapon. Curious, the director takes the object from the young man's hand to analyze it more carefully. Using a device on his eye, Tokumuni scans the fang and says the material is good. Then, the scientist asks if it was the boy himself who defeated the monster, and he confirms. Satisfied with the answer, Tokumuni agrees to help him and points to the center of the room. After getting permission, the laboratory floor trembles. Soon after, a huge piece of machinery begins to rise from the floor right in front of them. The hero is impressed by the size of the machine that suddenly appeared there. The director says this is the most modern and advanced synthesis machine in the country. He explains that the boy's material is new, and therefore he wants to monitor the results. With that, the scientist allows him to use the equipment for free, and then leaves the room. His partner then offers to guide him through the process, since the boy has never done it. The hero thinks it's not surprising he knows nothing about the synthesis procedure. After all, only students of rank B and above learn about this technique at the academy. The creature says the first step is to choose the weapon for the process, which will be the schools. Immediately after, the second step consists of selecting the element to imbue the blade with. A chart shows that the number of elements depends on the weapon's rank, from F to S. The young man's sword is rank F, so it can only have one element slot. The third step is to reinforce the weapon with materials that can range from gems to bones. The creature also comments that it's possible to fuse two different swords into one. In his case, the material will be the dragon's fang, and the final stage is the fusion itself. The system will show the power and time of the fusion, and he prepares to start the process. The boy then declares that the weapon will be his sword and places it inside the synthesis machine. The machine's screen shows the element options, and his partner complains about the lack of variety. With no choice, the creature tells him to select the light element, and the boy obeys the command. A compartment opens in the equipment, and the young man asks if he should put the material there. He inserts the dragon's fang into the machine. The hero asks about the fusion time, and his partner tells him to set the time for 3 years. Shocked, the boy yells that it's a joke and he can't wait that long. His companion tells him to stop complaining, and the young man accepts the order, albeit reluctantly. The machine then informs that the synthesis has begun, and the weapon will be ready in 3 years. Suddenly, the glowing card flies from the boy's hand, and he desperately yells for it to stop. Ignoring the request, his object slides into a secret slot in the machine. At this, an intense blue light envelops the equipment, and the young man wonders what's happening. The glow explodes in a blinding flash, and the system thanks the boy for his patience. A notification appears and reveals that the synthesis is complete, and the Sword of Chaos has been created. Back in the lab, the hero holds his new sword, and his partner warns that this was an exception. At that moment, the director appears, shocked, and yells, asking how the synthesis finished in a few seconds. Desperate, Tokumun fiddles with a holographic screen, trying to understand what happened. The creature tells him to flee while the man is distracted, and the young man sheathes his new weapon. The boy says thanks for everything and leaves while the scientist yells for him to wait. Leaving the building, the hero overhears two people talking about the recent news. One of them mentions the unknown, and the young man stops for a moment to listen to the conversation. The man says the unknown defeated the dragon alone and that he's a monster rookie. His friend says the clans will fight to recruit him, and the protagonist continues on his way. An adventurer dreams of being recruited by Rumika's clan, but his colleague scoffs at the idea. The hero is confused by the situation and decides it's best to go home and rest. But the cute creature appears and says they should go to a dungeon to test the new sword. With a smile, the doll reveals they're going to the dungeon of the divine beast Cerberus. Then, an image of the three-headed beast appears as the ground begins to shake. The protagonist is startled by the suggestion and questions if his partner really said Cerberus. The next day at the academy, his friend Rinny appears running and calls the hero's name. The girl ignores the other student and cries, relieved to see her friend is alive and well. Catching her breath, the young woman says she heard the monster that invaded the school attacked him. The young woman says she was worried because he didn't read her messages or come to class. Angrily, she shouts that she was very worried, and the protagonist asks what she's doing there. The young woman says she's the one who should be asking that, and that she came to ask to go to a dungeon. The boy understands and comments that it's no surprise, since she's the best mage in the second year. On his shoulder, the creature tells him to stop giving out information and to get going, and the young man agrees. Wiping her tears, the girl smiles and says she's happy he's safe. The hero then apologizes for making his friend so worried about him. Suddenly, the student notices the creature on his shoulder and asks what that doll is. The young woman's eyes sparkle, and she's amazed by the little thing's cuteness. Without even waiting, the young woman grabs the doll and asks if she can have it for a second. The girl smells the plushie and comments that its scent is comforting for some reason. She hugs the boy's partner tightly, and the young man finds the scene a bit strange. The hero then says she can take it home, and the student is surprised by the offer. The boy tells her to take it home and return it later, and the doll becomes desperate. The student thanks him profusely and hugs the creature tightly while blushing with happiness. With that, the young woman says goodbye to her friend and leaves, waving with the plushie in her hands. The hero tells his partner not to get upset because the girl returned him quickly. The creature gets furious and shouts that that's not the point, hitting the young man on the back. Even so, the doll grabs the boy's clothes and seems to want to say something important. He reveals that, thanks to this, he has reunited with his childhood friend whom he lost 10 years ago. The partner thanks the protagonist for helping him find his old friend again. The young man says he's happy to hear that and continues on his way with his friend on his shoulder. Meanwhile, the white-haired boy watches everything from a distance, fiddling with his phone. He mutters that this boy must be that Haruto, the germ, with a dark look. With a smile, he hopes that the mysterious dragon slayer will be fun to face. The scene shifts to the student guidance office, where someone seems to be waiting. At the desk, a person slams their hand on some papers and asks if what they heard is serious. A gem on a uniform glows as the person continues their question in a tone of disbelief. The girl with glasses introduces herself as Yuzuki, the vice president, and questions him about the event. The protagonist confirms his version of the story, and the girl stares at him suspiciously from the desk. At this, Yuzuki picks up some papers and says a violent dragon invaded the school 2 days ago. She continues, saying that several witnesses saw the monster fly in the direction he was running. The young man makes up a story that the dragon went after another student and that he barely escaped with his life. He then says goodbye to go to class, but the vice president tells him to wait a bit. Leaving the room, the hero wonders why everyone suspects it was him. His partner shows him on the phone and says the answer to that question is right there on the screen. In the post, a news story says a dragon slayer saved Tokyo from the recent crisis. Many people comment, amazed, and call the mysterious savior the city's hero. The boy then asks if the creature can delete the post using space-time magic. The doll replies that with his current skills that's impossible, and the young man understands. With a sigh, he enters the classroom and his eyes widen at what he sees inside. All the students whisper among themselves as soon as they see him and comment that he's finally here. Sitting in his seat, the protagonist remembers how his classmates always avoided him, but he notices that for some reason, the atmosphere in the classroom is different today. At that moment, Rine runs in and says there's an emergency because he's there. The same figure from before appears and tells her to stop. The white-haired boy introduces himself as Ryuga Sumeragi, the council president. He then repeats his name and introduces himself as the student council president. With his red eyes gleaming, the president says he has come to challenge our hero to a magic duel. At this, all the students in the class start whispering about the council president's challenge. A group of students comments among themselves that this whole situation is completely crazy, but one states that the rookie can't use spells because he has no magical elements. He then recalls that even so, the boy broke the magic measurement device. The device also had traces of unidentified materials, and the hero gets worried. He also shows the post about a mysterious dragon slayer saving Tokyo from a crisis. The white-haired boy then accuses the young man of defeating the monster all by himself, and that he finished off the Chaos Dragon, famous for its extremely violent nature. The protagonist is stunned, and the president reveals that he finds him a very intriguing person. With a confident smile, he says he finds the rookie a very interesting figure, and that's why he needs to finish the boy off before he becomes a bigger problem. With a smile, the president reveals to the class that he has also defeated a dragon once. So, he proposes a duel to decide which of them deserves the title of Dragon Slayer, and he explains that the magic duel is a system for students to measure their strength. The hierarchies in the academy are defined by the results, and the best get privileges. Additionally, after graduation, Reincarnation, they can become officers in the Adventurers Guild. The only rule is not to use spells that cause irreversible or fatal damage in duels. Lower-ranked students can challenge higher-ranked ones, who must accept the duel. At this, the hero realizes that, having a low rank, he can refuse, and thinks it would be crazy to accept. At that moment, the president warns Rina that she should choose her friends more wisely. The white-haired boy then says that in her next private tutoring session, he will make sure to teach her a lesson she'll never forget, and that he will teach this lesson without leaving anything behind, and the girl is in shock. With a malicious grin, he says he will also teach her the secret to getting into the council. The girl clenches her hand and says she is looking forward to his guidance. At this, both the protagonist and his friend seem quite upset with the situation. The hero tightens his grip on the pin on his uniform and gets the president's attention. The protagonist stands up and faces the white-haired boy who challenged him. The protagonist then tells his rival that he wants to talk about the magic duel, and he says he accepts the council president's challenge. Hearing this, the hero's friend is shocked and worried about the boy's decision. The young man then says he accepts the duel, but he has one condition for the fight. At this, the president finds it amusing and asks if he really wants to impose any conditions. The protagonist points at his rival and says that the loser must leave the academy. With that, the white-haired boy gives a sinister smile at his opponent's audacity. He accepts the condition and warns that it's now too late to regret it. Our hero then stares him down with a serious look, full of confidence in his victory. Afterward, his partner praises the young man's attitude for standing up to Ryuga like that. The creature then says that the protagonist is starting to become more like him, but the hero knows Ryuga is strong and asks if his friend knows anything else about him. The doll makes a serious face, as it knows very well who the council president is. It reveals that in the future, Ryuga becomes the manager of the Shinjuku Adventurers Guild, and after developing new fire magics, he becomes one of the 7 great mages. The hero asks if he becomes a sage, and his friend confirms that the rival's personality is trash. The creature says he will use his power to take advantage of several female students at the academy. The partner also reveals that he is very good at creating factions of followers at school. Then, the doll adds that, on top of everything, the president also has a natural talent for magic. The creature explains that there's a good reason everyone calls him a genius mage. Because of all this, the partner warns that the young man can't beat him in his current state. The little creature tells the boy to check his stats to see his progress. With that, a screen shows Haruto Kujo's attributes, who is at level 15 as a swordsman. Looking at the stats, the creature comments that he has grown a lot since the beginning. But even so, the partner starts fiddling with the protagonist's attribute screen. He then compares them with the rival's attributes, and the hero is shocked and can't believe it. The screen shows that Ryuga is at level 78 and is rank A, being 10 times stronger. The hero can't believe he can see others' attributes and realizes the power difference. In the distance, the boy sees 2 female students, one of whom is crying while her friend comforts her. The crying girl desperately asks what she should do now in this situation. The student says she can no longer use magic and will fail the mage course. Her friend doesn't understand because she used the staff and spells correctly without making any mistakes. The girl then wonders if she should take private lessons with Mr. Ryuga to solve it. Hearing this, the hero is shocked, and the girl's colleague agrees she should accept. Then the other student says she believes the private lessons will solve the problem soon. Our boy remembers his rival's evil smile and him saying that everything ends quickly with the female students, and that it all ends if the girl closes her eyes and follows his orders. At this, the hero clenches his fist in anger and asks to talk to the 2 of them for a minute. The 2 look back, confused, not understanding what the boy wants with them now. Walking towards them, the girl's friend recognizes him as the one from the swordsman course. The protagonist then stands in front of the 2 young women with a serious and determined look. He says the young woman doesn't need his lessons and that he himself will fix her problem. The hero extends his hand to the young woman, who is startled by his sudden action. He concentrates and remembers something he learned in the magic element measurement class. The young man then uses his power to be able to see how the magical elements move. With this, the boy realizes her magic circuit is blocked from overuse. So, all the protagonist needs to do is remove the faulty part. And with that, the girl's magical element flow will start working normally again. He then asks the young woman not to make too much noise while he helps with the problem. The protagonist extends his hand towards the student, who is very confused by this. The hero's hand then begins to glow with a very intense blue energy. He then pokes the young woman several times and her friend screams her name, worried. Then, the colleague colleague asks what he's doing, but the young man just tells the girl to use magic. Her friend asks if she's okay, and the student confirms that nothing happened. The girl then clasps her hands, and a green energy begins to form between them. At this, a great wave of magic envelops the two, who are shocked by the result. The young woman shouts happily, because now she can use her magic spells again. At this, her friend realizes that she has become even stronger than before with his help. With a big smile, the student seems very happy and relieved with what happened. Then, she thanks our hero very much, who says it was nothing for him. The young woman cries with happiness and says that now she won't need Ryuga's lessons. At this, the protagonist remembers the threat the rival made to his friend Rina. Later, the hero walks through the academy and gets his partner's attention on his shoulder. The boy then asks the creature itself what he can do to get stronger. He explains that there are only 3 days left until his duel against the council president, and he wants to close the power gap and asks for the most efficient dungeon to train in. The creature smiles and says it was expecting this and got a map in advance. Our hero then asks what rewards he will receive in the place. His partner reveals that the dungeon will give a huge amount of experience points, and that, in addition, he will also get a new space-time spell. The creature says it will also be his chance to test the new weapon he synthesized, and that he will also acquire a summon, leaving our hero very excited. The hero was the one who suggested going to the dungeon, but now he's a little apprehensive. Faced with an army of monsters, he wonders how he's going to defeat them all alone. His partner teases him and asks if this situation doesn't put him back in the game. The protagonist agrees and says thanks as his hand begins to glow with energy. The creature warns him not to lose, and the young man, confident, replies that he won't. He then charges against the horde of enemies, promising to wipe them all out in the dungeon. With his eyes glowing, the boy shouts that he will defeat them, and the scene shifts to an hour later. Elsewhere, we see a group of adventurers fighting near a large elevator. One of them tries to attack a monster, but his sword breaks on impact with the enemy. A mage in the group tells him to get out of the way and prepares to cast a spell with her staff. She then launches a powerful blast of flames at the crystal knight. With a confident smile, the young woman asks what the enemy thought of her magic attack. But, to everyone's surprise, the monster emerges from the smoke without a scratch. The status screen reveals it to be a black crystal knight, immune to magic and resistant to physical damage. The group is terrified, as their attacks don't work, and they find the situation meaningless. Then, the knight prepares a powerful attack against the adventurers. The two cringe in fear, expecting the enemy's final blow, which never comes, but what they hear is just the sound of metal clashing hard against metal. The boy in the group looks at the scene, not understanding what's happening. He is then shocked to see that the attack was stopped by someone else. At this, a blade strikes the knight's head. Suddenly, our hero appears and lands a powerful blow on the crystal monster. The enemy then explodes into several pieces, and the group of adventurers is surprised. They realize they are alive and thank the young man for saving them from death. The protagonist warns that there are many monsters in the dungeon and they should leave soon. The boy asks what will happen to him, and our hero tells them to go on ahead. Meanwhile, he will stay behind and hold off the approaching enemies. The young man turns to the horde of knights and tells the adventurers to go. The group apologizes for the trouble and thanks him once again for the help. His partner then warns that that was monster number 89. The creature says he's not even halfway to his goal, and the hero agrees. The boy says he'll finish things quickly and level up without holding back. The protagonist wields his sword, prepared for battle. He then charges forward, cutting through several crystal monsters in his path with agility. His partner warns that these enemies give the most experience in the dungeon. With this, they are perfect for the young man to level up quickly, but the creature warns that at the boy's current level, these enemies are very strong. At that moment, the swordsman's eyes glow with an intense blue energy. Suddenly, chains of energy erupt from the ground and trap all the enemies. The partner explains that with the Sword of Chaos, the outcome of the fight can change, because the blade is charged with the element of light, which is very powerful. Thus, the hero can easily cut through all the crystal monsters. The creature confirms that the boy is now strong enough to fight them. He then lands in front of an army of monsters and wants to defeat several of them. The young man concentrates energy in his feet, preparing to advance on the horde, but he changes his mind and says he won't take down just a few, but all of them. With his renewed determination, one of the monsters charges to attack him. With that, the boy manages to defend himself from the monster's multiple attacks. His eyes glow with a blue energy as he prepares for the attack. And even while cutting down several enemies, he seems surprised by their sheer number. After the battle, he stands amidst the debris of the crystal monsters. Tired and panting, he sees an even larger enemy emerging before him. A screen shows that the Black Crystal General has very high attributes. His partner then warns him that this monster has boss-level attributes. The swordsman charges forward, and his blade clashes with the giant monsters. The young man realizes he needs to act before the monster's power defeats him. He then decides decides he needs to use his sword's element to win. With that, the boy dodges the powerful vertical attack launched by the general. The dark energy in his hand concentrates, preparing the counterattack. He positions himself behind the enemy, taking advantage of the opening to strike. With his eyes glowing, he prepares to deliver his final blow. With his sword, he cuts down the giant monster with a powerful and precise strike. Even after the victory, the hero is panting, and his partner calls his attention. Suddenly, an explosion throws him far away, and he complains that he's too busy. The creature then begins to explain that space-time magic is quite different. Its power doesn't depend on magical elements, but on things that control time. He reveals that the protagonist uses the chrono element, and that's why he can use magic. The young man complains about the timing, but his friend says that fighting is the best time to learn. At this, more crystal monsters advance in his direction to continue the combat. The boy uses his energy chains once more to trap all the enemies. As he cuts down the monsters, the creature warns him never to let his guard down. Before him, then, new hooded monsters appear in the dark dungeon. A screen reveals that these are black crystal sorcerers with high magical resistance. The sorcerers begin to charge a powerful sphere of purple energy together. At that moment, the partner reminds the young man that he is a space-time mage, and that even in the middle of combat, he can learn and dodge the mage's attacks. He instructs him to focus his consciousness on the chrono element without pause. With wide eyes, the hero concentrates as he faces the magical attack. The creature shouts for the young man to take control of the flow of time immediately. With that, the boy's eyes glow with a blue energy and a magical pattern. The sorcerer's magic then causes a huge explosion in the middle of the dungeon, but the protagonist manages to protect himself using a blue energy shield. With that, his shield blocks one of the advancing crystal monsters. The young man then extends his hand and prepares to cast his own magic. A blue energy begins to concentrate in his palm for the counterattack. He fires a powerful energy beam that hits all the enemies in the room. After the dust settles, all the monsters in the dungeon have been completely defeated. The boy looks at his hand and asks if this is what it means to use the flow of time. With a smile, the creature confirms that the boy's thinking is correct. The partner thinks he is more talented than expected and used the space-time bullet. At this, the hero's attack pierces one of the dungeon's armors with immense power. The hero leans on his sword, standing on a mountain of defeated monsters. Even after the victory, he is panting and visibly tired from the battle. At this, several notification screens appear in front of him, saying he has leveled up. With his energy renewed, he then asks where his next target is. Suddenly, the rank B dungeon boss appears, and it's the divine beast Cerberus. The three-headed monster then stares him down with a fierce snarl and glowing eyes. The protagonist faces the rank B dungeon boss, the divine beast Cerberus. His partner then explains that this boss has a sense of dignity and integrity uncommon for monsters. Even so, the creature warns him not to let his guard down against the beast under any circumstances. A screen confirms that the enemy is the sacred beast Cerberus, the rank B dungeon boss. His partner compares the beast to a samurai, saying it possesses the soul of a warrior. Our hero seems to feel a strong pressure coming from the monster and is a little out of breath. Cerberus's eye glows intensely as it watches the young man's every move in front of it. Seeing his condition, the creature offers him a potion and says it will make him feel a little better. The protagonist agrees and takes the potion, preparing to drink it and regain his strength. The three-headed beast just watches him, and the boy wonders if it's waiting for him to recover. Faced with the monster's attitude, the protagonist stands still in front of it. Moved by the enemy's honor, the hero says that this is a very strange dungeon boss. At this, his partner points out an old wound on the monster and tells the boy to aim his attack there. With the potion taking effect, he feels the beast's intimidating aura return and says he understands. He realizes the monster was indeed waiting and feels indebted to it. Cerberus's tail glows intensely as it prepares to start the combat. With ferocity, the three-headed beast charges towards the boy to attack him with everything it has. The monster attacks with its claws, but the young man manages to dodge the mortal blow by a hair's breadth. With his eyes glowing, he uses space-time magic to move at high speed. The boy gets closer and aims his sword directly at the old wound, which is the weak spot. He confirms that this is the scar his partner mentioned and focuses all his power on that weak point. The creature charges at the protagonist even as he raises his blade. The protagonist, seeing a bite coming, protects himself with his blade. One of the creature's heads bites the sword hard to stop our hero's advance. Sparks fly everywhere as the two continue to test their strength in a major stalemate. Seeing an opening, he uses the enemy's head as a support to jump and reposition himself in the fight. With agility, the protagonist flies over Cerberus to try a new angle of attack, but one of the heads turns and fires a powerful breath attack in his direction. Seeing the danger, his partner desperately shouts for him to dodge that energy blast. With no time to react, the energy attack hits the boy head-on, causing an explosion explosion. However, he uses space-time magic, and what the beast hits is just an image from the past. Angrily, the protagonist concentrates his energy and prepares for a powerful counterattack. His hand glows intensely, and he strikes Cerberus's old scar head-on with his magic. With a cry of power, the boy releases all his energy directly into the monster's weak spot. Hit squarely, Cerberus roars in pain, feeling the devastating impact of the magical attack. After the attack, the hero lands while the beast holds the blade with its mouth. His partner is confused by the young man's action and doesn't understand what happened at that moment. The creature then remembers the technique he used on the female student to heal her magical circuits. At this, the monster's wound begins to glow with a blue energy and heal completely. The protagonist reveals that he healed the beast because he wants to fight his opponent fairly. Completely shocked, the doll shouts that he's gone completely crazy and is going to die. But the boy explains that it's necessary to return the respect he received, even from a monster. In a gesture of honor, the three-headed beast throws the sword back to the young man with precision. His partner is shocked and comments that the enemy returned the boy's weapon as an equal. With the debt paid, Cerberus now faces the protagonist. However, the protagonist refuses the sword and says he won't need it for the fight. With that, the young man clenches his fists, preparing to fight without his weapon. In a fighting stance, he says this isn't about leveling up or defeating a boss. With a determined look, he declares that this is just a real fight. The monster seems to understand the challenge and faces him with the same respect. From a distance, his partner understands nothing and wonders what the hell is happening. Without wasting time, the protagonist charges and lands a powerful punch on Cerberus. But he realizes the impact wasn't as strong as he expected on the creature. In response, the three-headed beast hits him with a powerful and accurate attack. Our young man is thrown hard against a crystal wall. However, the protagonist manages to recover and lands on the crystal. Quickly, he counterattacks the beast with a powerful leap towards Cerberus. He lands a powerful punch on the beast's face. The powerful blow hits one of Cerberus's heads, which seems to have felt it. However, he doesn't give up and tries a bite against the protagonist. His bite hits the protagonist's entire arm, who feels the pain. He grits his teeth and sweats from the effort to survive the attack. The beast then shakes him violently. While being bitten, the protagonist screams in pain. Seeing this, his partner becomes extremely worried and shouts his name in total despair. After being thrown against the crystal, the protagonist feels pain. His partner tells him to pull himself together. The beast's three heads begin to charge a powerful combined energy attack. The protagonist's eye glows intensely as he calmly says he already knows what to do. He then declares that he will put all his strength into this last attack to win. One of Cerberus's heads fires a powerful golden energy beam in his direction. The attack causes a huge explosion of light that fills the entire dungeon room. Enveloped in his own energy, the protagonist prepares for the final blow against the monster. With all his energy focused, the young man hopes his body can withstand the power he's about to use. Then he charges with a battle cry, releasing all his energy at once. Without wasting time, the protagonist charges and lands some powerful punches against the beast. But the monster retaliates and throws him far away with a blow that injures his arm. Despite the pain, the young man faces the enemy with a look full of hatred and determination. The three-headed beast then roars and charges with its claws to end the fight. At this, the protagonist concentrates his energy in his fist, preparing for the attack. With his eyes glowing intensely, he releases all his strength in a single shout. He lands another devastating punch on one of the creature's heads. The beast screams in pain from the impact. Leaping into the air, he faces the monster's three heads and prepares his final blow. With a determined look, he shouts that this will be the end of the line for the creature. A huge explosion of blue energy occurs and completely engulfs the monster. After the dust settles, we see the protagonist standing and his enemy fallen. The young man then reflects and wonders if he's always been like that in battles. With a sigh, he concludes that he's always been a musclehead who acts without thinking. A system window appears and confirms that he has cleared the rank B dungeon. Suddenly, he wakes up, and a familiar voice asks if he's finally awake. Opening his eyes slowly, he seems not to understand what happened in that place. His partner then looks at him very worried, waiting for the young man's response. Sitting on the floor, he says that somehow he managed to defeat the powerful enemy. A screen reveals that he leveled up 20 times, and he wonders what else he gained. The system shows that he got a cloak, and the young man decides to try it on later. But suddenly, the hero notices something strange and gets a look of astonishment. To his shock, the creature is standing in front of him again. The standing creature leaves the protagonist surprised, but to his surprise, the beast now looks like a cute and friendly puppy. Completely confused, the protagonist is speechless at the monster's change. The creature now looks at him with a docile expression and even wags its tail happily. Even without understanding, he decides to extend his hand to the three-headed beast. With that, he pets the monster's creature's head, which seems to like it a lot. The creature says the beast liked him, and the protagonist questions if that is really the boss. His partner says it was unexpected, but that he got the reward anyway. The protagonist then asks if the prize was the equipment, but the creature denies it immediately. With that, he reveals that the reward is the sacred beast Cerberus itself, the best in the dungeon. The entity warns that to form the contract, he needs to feed the beast his blood. Without a second thought, the protagonist cuts his finger, offering the blood to the creature. He then offers it to one of the creature's mouths. A screen confirms that the beast is his servant, and the partner says they have achieved their goal. 3 days later, at the Adventurers Academy, someone points to a figure in the courtyard. The students look at our hero and whisper, wondering if it's really him. With a bandage on his face, the young man walks with a serious and determined look. Suddenly, his friend Rinna spots him from afar and shouts his name. She runs to him and asks where he's been, as she couldn't get in touch. The protagonist explains that he underwent special training for the duel against the president. The girl is very worried, wondering what he did to get so beaten up. Our hero says confidently that one way or another, he is ready for the fight. Seeing this attitude from him, the girl wonders if he's the same friend she used to know. With his eyes closed, the young man seems calm and much more confident than usual. From a distance, the council president observes and thinks the rookie had run away in fear. With a malicious grin, he thinks the rival came only to show how pathetic he is. Then, the white-haired boy and his followers approach them in the school hallway. He then announces to everyone that the duel will take place right after today's class. Mockingly, the president asks if he's prepared and calls him Dragon Slayer. Without hesitation, our hero faces his rival and confirms that he is more than ready. The president then asks if he hasn't forgotten the stupid condition he proposed. The protagonist confirms that the loser of the fight will have to leave this school forever. At this, the rival says that's not enough, and the young man asks what he means. The white-haired boy then extends his hand, ready to show off. He proposes adding 100 million credits to the bet to make it more fun. Hearing this, our protagonist is completely shocked by the absurd amount. The other students start pressuring the protagonist to accept the bet. Observing everything, his partner realizes the council president's move. The creature understands that the rival is using the other students to provoke the young man. With this, he concludes that his opponent is as cunning as he always was in the future. The rival then declares that he will take everything the protagonist possesses at that moment. With a malicious grin, he adds that he will turn him into his slave. His friend tries to intervene, but the young man interrupts her and accepts the 100 million bet. The council president smiles, satisfied with his opponent's bold response. He then says goodbye, saying he's looking forward to their magic duel later. Before leaving, he turns to the girl and threatens her about her private lesson. The young woman is completely speechless and terrified by the president's threat. Seeing her reaction, our hero turns and asks her not to worry. With a confident smile, he assures his friend that he will definitely win the fight. After days of intense training in the dungeon, our young man has prepared well for this duel. Later, after class, the protagonist walks down the hallway. The time for the duel is finally approaching. But suddenly he stops and looks to the side with a very confused expression. At this, a group of bullies appears, and the leader invites him to play a little before the fight. One of the guys reveals they each get 1 million credits if they take him out. The protagonist hears the threat but remains calm and shows no reaction. The aggressors ask if he's scared and say that crying won't help. Ignoring the provocations, our hero whispers that this is a great relief for him. Completely confused by the response, the bullies don't understand the situation at all. He says he's relieved to know his rival uses cliched and predictable tricks. With that, he warns them that they will be the first to receive their share of the reward. Furious at the audacity, the leader of the aggressors points his sword and calls him a bastard. The bully yells for the young man not to get too cocky because of that attitude. With a cold look and his eyes glowing blue, the protagonist prepares for the counterattack. In the blink of an eye, he charges forward and smashes the bully to the ground with a single blow. With his eyes glowing, he faces the rest of the group without showing any fear. He then stands up and says it's a pain to have to deal with all of them at once. Meanwhile, in the arena, the rival complains that the Dragon Slayer hasn't shown up yet, so he asks the judge if he can win by default if the opponent doesn't arrive. His followers say the rookie was a fool and probably ran away in fear of him. With a smile, the president thinks his lackeys have already taken care of the protagonist. In the stands, the hero's friend looks very worried about his disappearance. But suddenly, someone in the crowd shouts that the challenger has finally arrived. At this, the president and his followers turn around, shocked, not believing what they see. Completely shocked, the rival asks what the hell the young man is doing there. The hero replies that there's nothing strange, as they had scheduled a duel before. Speechless, the council president points at the protagonist, not knowing what to say. Back at the school, all the bullies were left on the floor, completely defeated. With a serious look, the protagonist says they can finally start the fight. He turns to the judge and asks him to give the signal to start the duel. The judge announces the student from class 3 to take his position for the duel. duel. Next, he introduces the student from Class 2F, Kujo Haruto. With both fighters in their positions, the judge finally gives the start signal. The council president grits his teeth in anger for being humiliated before. He then says he doesn't know how the rookie did that, but he's going to finish him. With a clenched fist, he prepares to show all his power in the fight. At this, his opponent shouts that he's going all out from the start. A huge wave of fire explodes from him and advances towards our hero. Walking through the flames, the president seems very confident of victory. With a malicious grin, he asks if his opponent is ready for what's to come. Our hero watches as a screen reveals that he's using an advanced fire spell. Without wasting time, the president charges and launches a powerful flame attack. He thinks he didn't hold back, and if the blow hits, it will be the end of his rival. But the protagonist remains calm, and his eyes glow with a blue energy. His opponent continues to concentrate his flames to ensure the blow lands. He realizes that the flames create a distortion in the flow of time as they advance. With that, the young man dodges the fireball, which grazes past him without any problem. The protagonist keeps moving and escapes several explosions. His face shows an impressive calm as another blow passes close by. Using his magic, the hero creates a residual image to trick his opponent. The council president is shocked and shouts that this is impossible. The young man steps on the scorched ground without a scratch, showing his superiority. The protagonist notices something strange after landing. He then jumps very high in the arena after suspecting something. From the ground, a pillar of fire erupts. Luckily, the protagonist noticed it beforehand. His rival can't believe that even his double trap attack failed. The president is stunned as the hero concentrates his bluish energy. He then uses his chrono ray ability and fires a massive energy beam. The attack hits the president squarely, throwing him against the arena floor. The audience is in shock and wonders how someone without magic did that. With a big smile, his friend says that what she just saw was incredible. She thinks she already knew it and that he's no longer the same Haruto as before. As he walks in the arena, the protagonist asks if he wasn't going to fight with everything from the beginning. Already on his feet, the president observes the protagonist, quite injured. With a furious look, the protagonist's rival seems to have become very angry with the situation. He then shouts in anger and releases a huge amount of flames around him. His partner explains that this spell involves direct attacks with flames of 3,000 degrees, but our hero calmly faces the attack and begins to manipulate the flames with his hand. The president shouts that the spell burns everything it touches and that he will turn to ashes. With that, the protagonist charges and kicks his rival's leg to unbalance him in the duel. He then grabs Ryuga's arm, immobilizing him on the ground. With the president on the ground, the protagonist prepares a blow to his face. With a look of astonishment, the hero's rival seems to fear the blow. However, out of mercy, the protagonist lands the blow only on the side of the president's face. Our protagonist then calmly says that he managed to extinguish the flames of the attack. Furious, the president points at the young man and calls him trash who will be failed. At this, the rival turns to his followers and asks if they already know what to do. With their hands glowing, the president's followers shout his name and agree to help. With that, a huge fire symbol forms above the president as he absorbs the magic. The president smiles as he receives the power, and the future voice says it's a violation of the rules. Our hero then asks how much power from other people he needs to fight. The protagonist's rival just gives a malicious laugh with his hair on fire. Suddenly, his feet begin to transform into dragon claws with his secret technique. A fiery aura surrounds the president. The attack then explodes into a huge column of flames that rises to the arena ceiling. Seeing the power of the magic, the young man is shocked and can't believe what he sees. At this, the flames begin to take the form of a huge fire dragon in front of him. The fire creature is a summon, and the protagonist knows he can't win normally. Even so, the protagonist faces the creature and says he already knows he can't fight normally. Faced with the huge fire dragon, the creature unleashes a flame attack against the protagonist. With an impressive leap, he manages to dodge the magical creature's powerful attack. Then, he fires a blue energy beam from his hand to counterattack the fire monster. With wide eyes, the hero can't believe what just happened. The fire monster took no damage, and the young man realizes his blow was useless. At this, the flaming creature prepares another blow to end the duel for good. The huge dragon charges and corners the protagonist. Retreating due to the flames, he finds himself completely surrounded by the enemy's fire. Pushed against the wall, he has nowhere to escape. The young man then realizes he has nowhere left to run and is completely trapped. The giant fire creature surrounds him from all sides to prevent him from escaping. But with With his eyes glowing blue, the protagonist seems to have a new plan in mind. He then notices something strange in a part of the time flow within the monster. The protagonist realizes that it's like a crack or fissure in the flow of time. With this, he thinks that if he widens this fissure, he might have a chance to win. At that moment, the fire dragon attacks with its giant claw, smashing the ground. But a blue light shines right in the palm of the creature's paw, surprising everyone. Suddenly, the hero appears, enveloped in blue energy, and stops the dragon's attack. He then jumps away, and we see that he used an image from the past to escape the blow. Holding his sword, the protagonist asks his partner to let him use the plushie again. The cute creature appears and complains that he's going to do that again, but ends up agreeing. With that, the protagonist grabs his partner, who makes a face of complete despair. He then throws the creature, which glows with a blue energy and an angry face. The protagonist stomps on the ground and uses a chain ability to trap his partner in mid-air. With that, he uses the doll as an anchor to swing himself and gain momentum. With a focused look, the young man prepares to attack the fire monster with everything he's got. The hero then charges at high speed towards the flaming creature to attack. With his eyes glowing intensely, he focuses on the weak spot he found in the enemy. He then realizes that this is the fissure in the flow of time he saw earlier in the duel. With a shout, the protagonist readies his sword to attack the creature's weak spot. He then delivers a powerful blow that cuts the fire dragon in half with his blade. The protagonist lands safely as the monster dissolves into dark flames. Seeing his attack defeated, the president is shocked, not understanding what happened. Desperate, the council president pulls his hair, not understanding what the hell happened. He shouts that it's impossible, and that as long as the followers chant, the magic regenerates infinitely. The president approaches and asks why the magic didn't regenerate. The president continues to shout that there is no magical principle like the one he knows. Our protagonist lands a powerful punch on his arrogant opponent's chest. With the blow, the white-haired boy falls to the ground, completely defeated and powerless. The teacher supervising the duel is shocked. The protagonist asks what the result of the fight is. Then, he announces that the winner of the duel is our hero, Kujo Haruto. We see Rina and her friends at a party, where she gathers everyone to celebrate. They then throw confetti and congratulate our hero on his victory in the duel. A little embarrassed by the celebration, our hero can only thank them all. The girl then hands him a glass and asks him to do the honors. The young man then sits at the table with the girls, who look at him expectantly. He looks at the glass and agrees to make the toast for the celebration to begin. With that, everyone raises their glasses and toasts together with great happiness. The students continue the party, drinking and eating the snacks on the table. One of the girls then says she's relieved the president is leaving the school. The others agree and complain that he was a horrible and very abusive guy. One of them hugs Rina and says she narrowly escaped the president's clutches. Suddenly, a classmate asks the hero what happened to the 100 million from the bet. The protagonist takes a sip of his drink. He then puts the glass on the table and admits he completely forgot about the bet. The girls are completely shocked and shout that it was a huge waste. The protagonist calmly explains that he was never interested in the bet money. Hearing this, the girls get hearts in their eyes and find his attitude cool. Then, one of the students calls him by his name, wanting to ask something important. She then asks what his relationship with Reen is, leaving him very confused. With the sudden question, his friend spits out all her drink, in shock at the situation. The young woman then shouts at her colleague, asking what she's saying out of the blue. Her friend explains that he picked a fight with the best student in school because of her. At this, the other girls join in and ask again what the relationship between the two is. Pressured by the students, the protagonist doesn't know what to say and starts to stutter. Seeing his reaction, the young women get even closer, waiting for his answer. With no way out, he suddenly stands up and makes up an excuse about needing to use the restroom to escape. Seeing him walk away, the girls comment that he managed to escape their question. One of the young women says he seems to have changed and now seems more mature. Rina then remembers that since that day, her friend has always been there. She remembers when they were children, and he protected her from a giant, ferocious creature. In the flashback, we see the young boy protecting his friend with a simple stick. Back in the present, Renee holds her glass and thinks that things have always been this way. With a flushed face, the girl remembers that they even share a secret now. She recalls how he saved her in the dungeon from that dark night. The young woman remembers the moment her friend defeated the monster with his power. She then remembers how the protagonist stood before her after saving her from danger. Meanwhile, in the bathroom, our hero washes his hands hands, thinking about the party that happened. He then receives a message from his friend apologizing for the questions. Reading the message, the protagonist gives a slight smile at the girl's concern. Looking at his reflection in the mirror, he thinks he hasn't seen something so lively in a long time. With that, he grips the sink more seriously. He remembers his family and how he thought he would never have happy moments again. The young man then questions whether the future can really be changed by his actions. Suddenly, the creature on his shoulder calls his name to get his attention. Annoyed, the boy turns and asks his partner to be quiet until they go home. The creature warns that it's an emergency, and the young man is confused by the declaration. His future self then says in a serious tone that the time has finally come. The protagonist turns and asks what the hell his partner is talking about now. Then, the entity says it will tell him the real reason for being there with him. With that, he reveals that the hero's younger sister, who was supposed to be dead, is actually alive, and an image of his sister comes to his mind. Completely shocked, the protagonist can't believe what he just heard. He remembers that his sister Ria passed away in an accident a long time ago, but the doll explains that she is not alive in the world he is in. The creature then tells him to prepare immediately for what is to come. With a determined look, the entity declares that the two of them will save her together. Soon, we have some flashbacks of the protagonist's childhood with his sister. With a big smile, the young woman showed off the red scarf she had just made. Curious, the protagonist asked if it was Ria herself who made the gift. With great pride, the little girl jumps with joy and confirms she made it all by herself. The protagonist finds her amusing. With a radiant face, the girl extends the gift, saying it's for him to wear. Completely surprised, the boy asks if it's really for him and if it will look good. With that, the young woman pouts and asks if he doesn't want her gift. Quickly, the protagonist denies it and says of course he wants the scarf. Hearing this, the little girl breaks into a huge smile of pure happiness. Then she puts the scarf on him and says he should have accepted it right away. With the gift around his neck, the boy comments that the stitching seems a bit loose. With the scarf in place, the girl warns that tomorrow is Christmas Day. Then she puts on a fake mustache and says it's a gift from Rihanna Noel. With a gentle smile, the hero understands the gesture and thanks her for the gift from the heart. The girl proposes a belated Christmas party after her ballet recital. With a smile, she says he will also have to give her a gift. But he reveals that he never kept the promise, as his family had an accident. Back in the present, the protagonist remembers that they never went home again. A voice calls his name and pulls him from his sad memories of the past. In his apartment, the young man continues to be lost in his thoughts about what happened. Looking at the shelf, he focuses on a very special memory from his childhood. He stares at the photo of his family and the scarf his little sister gave him as a gift. With that, the hero apologizes and asks his partner to repeat what he said before. The creature then tells him to pull himself together, as they have a mission that cannot fail. The protagonist agrees but asks why his sister Ria is alive in the first place. He then concludes that everyone died in the accident and she can't be alive. The partner asks what he knows about the accident, and the young man says it was a mystery. At this, the entity explains that this mystery is beyond their current science. The protagonist is shocked and confused by the revelation, not understanding anything. The cute creature reveals that a space-time hole opened in the sky that day. Confused, the protagonist asks what that is, and the entity confirms it's a dimensional connection. The being explains that the plane was pulled in by the hole, and that's why it disappeared from radar before crashing. Even shocked, the young man says this doesn't change the fact that all passengers died. His partner reminds him that his sister Ria's body was never found in the wreckage of the accident. At this, the creature concludes that she was the only one sucked into that hole, alone. With wide eyes, the hero finally begins to understand the truth behind it all. The entity says the place is called the Dimensional Rift, where time and space are not the same. Therefore, years in this world for the little girl would be less than the blink of an eye in there. So, when the hole opens again, his sister will finally return to this world. He reveals that this is why he came from the future, because when he discovered everything, it was already too late. The doll grabs his clothes and begs the young man to save the girl this time. Apprehensively, the little creature asks the protagonist of this world to do what he couldn't do in the other. The protagonist remains silent as he watches this creature. He then agrees and asks where and when the space-time hole will appear. The creature says it will appear right above the Tokyo Tower, in the Sky Castle dungeon. The next day, we see the city of Tokyo preparing for another normal workday. Looking at the city, the protagonist is ready for the mission. The mission, with his sister's scarf around his neck. The doll complains that he bought all the offensive items and recovery potions from the store. The young man replies that he only managed it thanks to the money he earned in the Azabu Crystal Labyrinth. The entity then asks why he is wearing the scarf in the middle of June. With a distant look, our hero just says he is very sensitive to the cold, and that's why he wears the scarf. The partner understands and decides not to press the matter further to not make him uncomfortable. He warns that the gate to the Sky Castle dungeon is at the Tokyo Tower Observatory. In 24 hours, the space-time space-time hole will open 300 meters above the dungeon. When that happens, the hole will eject his sister out of the dimensional rift. But if the hero doesn't arrive in time to save her, the girl will suffer a fall. The protagonist clenches his fist tightly. With his hand in front, he activates his space-time mage suit and prepares to act. With that, a bright blue aura envelops him, and he prepares to enter the dungeon. With his suit and a determined look, he promises he will save his sister, no matter the cost. Our hero then arrives at the location, but is immediately stopped by two armed guards who tell him to halt. They explain that a dungeon gate has appeared, and only rank A adventurers and above can enter. After receiving the information, the protagonist decides to use a different approach. His partner then asks what he's going to do, and the protagonist says there's no time and they'll take a shortcut. With that, the protagonist concentrates a blue energy in his feet, preparing for a quick action. Then he jumps and starts climbing the huge red tower using his enhanced agility. The creature says he's learning, but the protagonist complains that his future self is very annoying. The hero continues to climb the metal structure at an impressive speed. Reaching the top, the young man peeks over the edge to see what's happening inside the location. Inside, a red-haired man and his guards analyze the situation with a serious look. The young man's partner warns that a troublesome guy has arrived, and the protagonist asks if he knows him. The entity then explains that he is the head of the region's Adventurers Guild and is very stubborn. The future being also says that the man will just stand there looking at the gate without doing anything useful. The protagonist decides they can't wait and tells his partner they are going into the portal. With that, the protagonist intends to break the tower's window to get inside. The loud noise catches the attention of the guild leader, who wonders what that sound was. So he orders one of the guards to immediately check the source of the noise. The soldier looks at the window but sees nothing broken, becoming very confused. Suddenly, our hero appears as a quick blur right behind the inattentive guard. With a touch, the young man hits the soldier from behind, leaving him completely unconscious. The guard then falls to the ground, and our hero reveals that he used the material restoration ability. He explains that he fixed the glass he broke to get in, and now thinks about the next step. The supposed guard who was knocked out runs to warn his boss that they have a big problem. The soldier says there's an intruder and that he's too strong to be defeated alone. Annoyed, the guild leader decides he will personally handle this whole situation. With that, he shouts for his men to follow him to face the mysterious intruder. However, one of the guards who was there doesn't move and just stands still. Slowly, the soldier raises his hand and begins to take off his helmet. In fact, it was our hero in disguise, and his partner congratulates him on the great strategy. With that, he takes off the disguise. The protagonist approaches the portal and says it's time to enter. So, he walks towards the portal, but upon reaching the other side, his eye widens in total astonishment at what he sees. Suddenly, the young man finds himself falling headfirst into an inverted world. He then realizes that the scenery around him is completely upside down. His partner explains that going down the stairs in the Sky Castle dungeon actually means going up. The cute creature also reveals that the dungeon's theme is the occult and will have undead monsters. The protagonist finds it very ironic to fight an army of the dead in a clear blue sky. He comments that this doesn't match his style, but the entity says it has already taken care of that. His friend then reminds him that they imbued his new sword with the powerful element of light. At this, the young man recalls choosing the light attribute during the weapon synthesis. The creature says this was the main reason for his training and tells him to get ready. With a determined look, the hero advances through the dungeon, ready to face the enemies. His eyes shine with confidence as he prepares for the battle to come. Before him, a dark hooded creature appears for the first confrontation. The hooded enemy charges and attacks our hero with its crystal staff, but the young man defends himself with his shining sword and prepares a counterattack. At this, his partner explains that this dungeon disappeared in the future and is unexplored. The entity says it has information, but the protagonist continues to fight the monsters. With his feet firmly on the ground, the young man prepares. Then, the creature reveals that the Sky Castle has a total of 100 floors, and a powerful and unavoidable boss protects the dungeon every 20 floors. The hero then calculates that he will have to face a total of 5 bosses in the location. Looking at his phone, he sees there are 20 hours left and he can't waste time. But suddenly, the protagonist's eye widens. Out of nowhere, a horde of strange zombies begins to appear. In an instant, the army of bizarre creatures appears before our hero. Up close, we see the monsters with red eyes and open mouths, screaming. With no chance to react, the protagonist is surrounded by the creatures. The entire horde then jumps on him, completely covering him in the process. However, something happened. Suddenly, a silence fell over the dungeon. From within the horde, an explosion of blue energy occurs, and the protagonist summons the divine beast Cerberus. With his summon, he says there's no time to lose, and that they will pass through everyone as quickly as possible. The beasts scream, a horde of dark monsters. With his new summon, he clears a path through the enemies that appear before him. Looking back, the young man comments that he thought they would be stronger. His partner explains that because it's a sacred beast, its attacks have the sacred attribute. With that, the hero orders them to keep advancing and break through the horde of enemies. And so, they quickly ascend through the dungeon floors, defeating everyone in their path. Suddenly, the great creature stops its steps abruptly in the middle of the path. The protagonist then questions his partner about the reason for the sudden stop in the middle of the floor. Looking up, the protagonist gets a serious expression on his face. At this, they see a dark portal appearing in the middle of a circular arena. The entity reveals that this is the first boss that appears every 20 floors. From the darkness, an evil energy begins to slowly take over the entire place. Then, a golden carriage appears in the middle of all that black smoke. Then, the mysterious figures slowly descend from the vehicle that just appeared. In an elegant suit, they descend the stairs. The figure steps onto the ground with its elegant boots and reveals itself to our hero in the arena. Then, a screen reveals that they are the fallen noble family, a group of powerful vampires. The protagonist realizes there are 3 rank A undead monsters right in front of him. With a determined look, he thinks he needs to beat them to save his sister. At this, his partner screams desperately for him to be careful as the enemies are coming. Without wasting time, the trio of vampires charges to attack the protagonist with everything they have. Calmly, he tells his friend to retreat, and the creature asks if he will use the guild item. The young man then confirms he will, as he prepares for the battle to come. With that, he activates his new ability called Eye of Time, and his eye glows blue. Through his special vision, he can see the attack pattern of the youngest noble. The protagonist can also clearly see the next move of the vampire attacking him. He then predicts the flow of time to know how the family's master will attack. With this advantage, the protagonist prepares his counterattack with a bluish energy. He then launches a shower of gold and calcium knives towards one of the noble vampires. The youngest noble makes a face as if he felt nothing, even with the blade stuck in him. After the two get close to each other, the protagonist dodges the attack. The protagonist then propels himself. Leaving the younger enemy, he uses his gold and calcium blade against the other monster. Then, the protagonist hits the creature with some daggers, which it feels. With his eyes glowing blue, the hero faces his enemies with total determination. At this, he charges against the family's master, who screams in anger at the young man's attack. His dagger then strikes the vampire's chest squarely. The vampire tries a counterattack, landing a blow on the protagonist, who protects himself with his arms. The force of the attack throws him back hard, and he screams in pain from the impact. Even injured, the protagonist places his hand on the ground. With that, he uses the energy and gains some distance. His eyes glow, and he thinks the enemies are in the perfect position for his plan. Now, far from the vampires, the hero raises his hand and gives the command to detonate everything. He then clenches his fist, and an immense blue energy begins to explode all over the place. With that, an explosion hits all 3 vampires at the same time, who scream in pain. A large explosion of blue and green energy illuminates the entire dungeon arena. His partner explains that each knife is worth 100,000 credits and is made of a very rare metal. The creature then complains that he throws expensive items around without thinking about the consequences. The entity then questions if it's fair to win just by spending millions of credits in the fight. With a serious look, the protagonist says the battle isn't over yet and he needs to continue. He reveals that he only destroyed their physical bodies and now they've returned as ghosts. The young man realizes that, as he suspected, it's difficult to harm ghost monsters with physical attacks. But this also exposed their weakness, and he enchants his sword with the light attribute. With his sword glowing intensely, he charges with everything he has towards the enemies. With a battle cry, the protagonist attacks the ghosts with his sacred blade without hesitation. He then uses the Chaos Meteor ability, and several beams of light fall from the sky. The blinding light of the explosion illuminates the arena, defeating the ghosts at once. A system screen informs him that he has defeated the enemies and gained many rewards. After the victory, a staircase of light appears before him, leading to the next floor. Without wasting time, the hero begins to descend the steps to continue his training. With his eye glowing intensely, he swears he will rescue his sister named Rhea. On the 40th floor of the dungeon, the divine beast roars fiercely. But instead of attacking our hero, the creature charges in another direction with its eyes glowing. It turns out Cerberus was attacking another boss of the floor, the undead queen Lamia. After the battle, the three-headed monster calmly approaches our protagonist. The beast that was once threatening now licks the young man's face as if it were a puppy. Our hero then pets the creature and comments that it seems more like a pet. With that, they advance to the 50th floor, but the entity suddenly shouts for them to stop. Obeying the command, the huge three-headed beast stops immediately. Mounted on his new companion, the protagonist asks why they stopped in front of that wall. His partner then says there's no mistake, and the protagonist is left confused by the situation. The creature tells him to activate the Eye of Time and look at the wall to see what's there. The young man's eyes glow with an intense blue energy. Looking at the wall, the protagonist is shocked by what he can see and can't believe it. With his new vision, he discovers a secret room that disappeared in the original timeline. At this, the doll turns into the card and tells him to place it on the wall to open the secret passage. He obeys and places the envelope in the crevice of the wall as instructed to enter. Before moving forward, the protagonist asks his new companion to wait outside. Inside the secret room, he finds a huge blue crystal floating in the middle of the air. Suspicious, the young man asks the entity if this is another trap like last time. His partner assures him he won't trick the hero. A system screen appears, revealing that this is an acoustic crystal that releases hidden abilities. With a touch, a bluish energy begins to flow from the crystal directly into the boy's hand. Suddenly, the object shatters into several pieces, releasing a blinding glow throughout the place. The system informs him that he has gained new space-time magics and unlocked his potential. The entity is surprised he got the avatar replay, and the young man asks what that is. His partner just says it's better for him to test the new ability in a real combat. On the 60th floor, they find the boss, Zombie Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies. The doll explains that the monster flies, spits a solution that melts everything, and also regenerates. Annoyed, the protagonist complains that the creature is just listing the enemy's characteristics. With his eyes glowing, he prepares to face the new boss of that dungeon. Without wasting time, the monster attacks with its stinger at an impressive speed. The attack seemed to have pierced the protagonist's chest. In an instant, the protagonist appears behind the creature, which is confused, not understanding anything. His future version realizes that he is already using his new combat ability. The hero's blue clone stands still as the monster stares at it, not understanding the situation. With that, the real protagonist floats in the air, watching the beast attack his illusion. He then reveals that he is using his new space-time magic, Avatar Replay. While the monster attacks the clone, the young man activates his fast body ability to retaliate. With his body accelerated to level 3, he prepares for a precise counterattack. A blue aura envelops him, and he appears behind the creature. The force of his feet is so great that the ground begins to crack with the released energy. He then explains that the Avatar Replay magic can create a clone of his past self. With this, the clone temporarily takes his place to trick the enemy in battle. The hero and his clone prepare to attack the monster. Suddenly, several clones appear and attack Beelzebub from all directions at once. With swords in hand, both the hero and his clones prepare for the attack. Several clones of the protagonist appear at the same time for the fight. They all charge together in a coordinated attack against the giant monster. With that, he and his clones use the Chaos Meteor attack to finish off the enemy. The copies surround the giant monster, which has nowhere to escape from that trap. But, in response, Beelzebub fires a powerful poison attack in their direction. The attack hits the clones squarely, and they begin to dissolve from the corrosive poison. The real hero manages to dodge, but his copies are all destroyed by the monster. Suddenly, beams of golden light appear in the air around the creature. The monster is completely immobilized, unable to move after these blows from the protagonist, and finally, he defeats that creature. His partner congratulates him and calls him a master ninja, but the young man tells him to stop it. Looking ahead, the protagonist says that now there are only 2 bosses left to finish. With that, he steps, and another staircase appears again. But suddenly, he feels a strong headache and doesn't understand what's happening. With the intense pain, the protagonist loses his balance, and his partner screams, frightened by the scene. He then falls unconscious on the floor while his plush creature shouts his name. While unconscious, the protagonist has some flashbacks, 3 years in the past, showing our hero much younger. At this, a little girl appears and, with a ballet book in her hand, begs for something. With his arms crossed, the young man doesn't seem to agree much with the young woman's request. The girl then promises that she won't give up halfway if he accepts. With a cute look, his sister insists once more on the request. Seeing the young woman's insistence, the protagonist lets out a sigh and seems to give in. He then questions if she really wants to do ballet and if she's serious. With a huge smile on her face, the girl confirms yes, with great joy. The older brother finally agrees and asks her to choose the slippers. Very happy with the news, the little one starts jumping with joy on the living room sofa. Sitting next to him, the girl begins to flip through the book to choose her pair. Seeing his sister's happiness, the protagonist gives a gentle and content smile. After that, we see the two arriving at a dance studio studio for her class. Inside, several other girls were stretching and chatting animatedly. The girl then appears in her ballet outfit and says she's ready to start. The other girls celebrate Ria's arrival and say they will do their best. Surprise! The little one looks towards the door upon hearing her name called. With a smile, the girl waves to her brother, who is watching her from the entrance of the room. The young man then waves back and notices how well she seems to be fitting in. Her new friends tease her about her brother being there, and the little girl turns red. Soon after, the dance class begins, and all the students take their positions for practice. At first, the girl seems a bit clumsy, trying to copy the movements. But even with difficulty, the little one continues to strive to learn the dance. With her feet on point, she tries to make the movements with as much grace as she can. Then, with a smile on her face, the girl seems to finally be having real fun. Seeing this, her brother thinks that she seems to be having a lot of fun in class. After class, the girl says goodbye to her new friends. Walking home, the little one says that dance class was a lot of fun. She admits that ballet is quite difficult, but that she is determined to do her best. The protagonist listens attentively and says he is happy to hear that from her. The little one then seems to think of something and gets a more serious look. She then suddenly stops walking and calls her brother's name. The girl asks if the slippers and dance lessons were very expensive. With a smile, the protagonist says it was nothing and that she doesn't need to worry. But the girl remains worried and holds her bag more tightly. Her sister comments that since their parents are traveling for a conference, she concludes that all the money must have come out of her brother's pocket. Our hero is surprised and realizes that his younger sister has unmasked him, but the girl says it's okay and that he shouldn't worry about it. He then asks if she had a lot of fun in ballet class earlier. The protagonist says he is happy that she found something she really loves to do. With her eyes showing admiration, the girl looks at her brother and calls his name. In her hands, she holds a small gift box to thank her brother. With a flushed face, the young woman thanks him for everything he has done for her. Seeing this, the protagonist gives a gentle smile to his dear little sister. Suddenly, the little sister hugs him and says she loves him. She then runs ahead and says she will cook to show her love for him. The scene cuts to the present, and the hero remembers this with a determined look. We see him mounted on the three-headed beast he summoned in the dungeon. His partner then asks if the young man has finally woken up from his faint. The protagonist asks if he passed out, and the creature says he used too much energy. He thinks about using a potion, but his companion says he has already taken care of it. The entity explains that it healed the injuries, but not the hero's mental fatigue. With wide eyes, the young man desperately asks about the time limit. His partner then reveals that there are only 5 hours left until the duel. The protagonist stands up and tells them to go, even though he is very exhausted. At this, he remembers his sister and promises they will go to her ballet class one more time. The doll silently observes the young man's determination to continue. The entity says there's one boss left and then the final boss of the dungeon, but he thinks that at this rate, the protagonist won't last much longer. With a serious look, the cute creature says it has no choice but to use its last resort. He has reached the 80th floor of the Sky Castle dungeon, and we see the mummy of the Acid King. But the monster is immediately crushed by a powerful blue energy, and the creature shatters into countless crystal fragments. At this, we see that the attack came from our hero, who used his gravity magic, and he extends his hand, controlling the power. A system window informs him that he defeated the boss, leveled up twice, and his swordsman skill also increased by 4 points. After the intense battle, our hero looks completely exhausted and panting, and he can barely stand after so much effort. At that moment, his companion Cerberus approaches the protagonist. With a smile, the young man thanks his faithful companion for the help, and he pets the beast's head while the doll watches. Suddenly, a system window appears asking if he wants to use an elixir, and without a second thought, the protagonist selects the yes option. With that, a green healing aura completely envelops him, and his energy and injuries are restored in the blink of an eye. Even though recovered, the boy still feels the fatigue, and his partner asks if he doesn't want to rest a bit after that fight. But the young man refuses and says there's no time to lose, as there are only 3 hours left for his sister to emerge from the space-time hole. With his goal in mind, he decides to head straight for the top floor. Soon after, a system notification informs him that he has reached the 100th floor and the Sky Castle dungeon has been cleared. Looking at the cosmic scenery, he says they have finally reached the top, and his partner confirms it's time to face the final boss. The creature explains that after defeating the enemy, he can reach the exact location, as that is where the space-time hole will appear. With a determined look, our hero touches his scarf. His eyes glow with blue energy, and he says he is ready to go on with the fight. The young man then walks down a long corridor towards an imposing throne. Sitting on the throne, a giant skeleton is seen, enveloped in a sinister purple aura. A window reveals that he is the Soul Reaper, the god of the underworld and the dungeon boss. Seeing Seeing the enemy, the protagonist tenses up, and his partner seems very annoyed with the situation. The cute creature reveals that this monster doesn't even exist in the future's database. Suddenly, the dungeon boss speaks and wonders why only one human is there. With that, the protagonist is surprised to discover that this creature can talk. The monster praises him for having come so far alone, without anyone's help. At this, the Soul Reaper begins to summon a dark weapon with his purple magic. In response, the hero materializes his own sword with a brilliant blue energy. Holding his new weapon, he faces the giant skeleton, preparing for combat. The god of the underworld promises to cast the deadliest curse that exists upon him. At this, the protagonist's partner realizes that the enemy's weapon is in the database. The screen reveals that the weapon is the Divine Scythe of Curses, a staff for illusion magic with negative status effects. But the protagonist doesn't care about the description and says it doesn't matter how strong it is. With his eyes glowing intensely, he swears he will defeat the monster immediately. Using his enhanced vision, he finds the enemy's weak spot, which is in its chest. Then, the hero activates his body acceleration to level 3 to start attacking. With incredible speed, the young man charges towards the Soul Reaper. The god of the underworld is surprised by the boy's speed. The protagonist dodges the giant scythe's blow with great agility and continues to advance. The dark blade descends with devastating force and nearly hits the protagonist. The weapon's impact shatters the floor into pieces, but the hero manages to escape the attack unscathed. After dodging, he jumps over the monster, looking for an opening to retaliate. The young man then concentrates his blue energy in his hand, preparing for a counterattack. His target is the glowing core in the giant skeleton's chest to end the fight. He leaps into the air and prepares a devastating blow towards the enemy's weak spot. His sword tries to hit its target, but the monster defends itself well. A large explosion of purple energy occurs, but the blow doesn't seem to have had the expected effect. To the protagonist's surprise, the god of the underworld is still standing and seems unharmed, preparing a new attack. Then, the giant skeleton swings its scythe and launches a powerful wave of energy towards the young man. The monster fires a powerful blow against the protagonist. The Soul Reaper realizes he attacked a copy and the real protagonist. With that, the real hero appears right above the enemy, ready to deliver a fatal blow from above. At that moment, he activates his ability and shouts the name of the magic to summon paralyzing chains. Blue chains appear out of nowhere and wrap around the giant monster's body, trapping its movements. With his sword in hand, the young man prepares to use the opportunity and finish off the boss once and for all. But the god of the underworld mocks him and says that a curse of that kind won't work on a divine being. Suddenly, the energy chains begin to crack and break under the immense force of the Reaper. Seeing this, the protagonist is shocked, as he didn't expect his ability to fail in that way. The chains shatter, and the creature easily frees itself from the magic. With its red eyes glowing, the creature glares at the protagonist with hatred, preparing to counterattack. At this, a purple energy traps the hero, and his partner screams his name, desperate, upon seeing the young man in danger. The powerful blow surprises the protagonist, however. Before he could be hit, he narrowly dodges. His hand stretches out as he falls uncontrollably after dodging in fright. The hero recovers and defends against the attack of a huge skeleton with a giant scythe. The monster taunts him for dodging twice and notes his confidence in his speed. The creature then calls him an inferior being for not having wings and needing to crawl. With that, the skeleton says it will attack his legs first to immobilize him. The enemy then activates an ability called Dimension of Curses. Shocked, the young man feels the world around him begin to distort completely. At this, everything turns upside down, and he starts falling upwards towards the boss. In the inverted sky, they face each other. The protagonist wonders again what happened, and the monster smiles maliciously. Looking down, he sees the dungeon floor cracking and falling. The floor breaks, and he laments having climbed 100 floors just to plummet now. The skeleton warns that he won't move and prepares an attack with its scythe. The protagonist panics upon seeing the monster smiling maliciously, upside down. With that, he summons a blue energy dagger and prepares for the counterattack. The skeleton's blow collides with the young man's dagger, generating a huge explosion. He then says you can't make an omelet without breaking eggs and shouts to explode. The explosion throws him backward, and he continues to fall in the inverted sky of the dimension. At that moment, the protagonist realizes there is a wall and that he is trapped in the trap. Without hesitation, the protagonist uses his blade to anchor himself to the wall. With the wall broken, he steadies himself on the floating debris with a determined look. Observing the scene, the skeleton monster is surprised by the boy's unexpected action. The hero faces his enemy and begins to think to understand the situation he has gotten himself into. He then realizes that this whole fall is just an illusion created by his opponent. The young man believes he has fallen for the spell and wonders how he can break that magic. With a focused look, he shakes his head, but the skeleton gives him no time and already prepares another attack with its dark energy. The monster then opens its mouth and fires a powerful pink energy beam at the hero. The pink energy beam narrowly misses him, but grazes his leg. The dark energy then clings to his leg like a kind of curse. At this, the monster warns him that he will be his newest test subject for magic. The creature explains that the grudge of the dead will slowly corrode his body. Then, the skeleton asks what will finish the protagonist first, whether it will be the hatred of his own kind or something much more powerful, or if it will be his powerful scythe from the underworld that will defeat him for good. The protagonist then realizes he needs to get out of that dimensional space quickly, but he wonders how he can do that if he is trapped and immobilized by the magic. The skeleton gives him no time and already prepares a powerful attack with its giant scythe. With a malicious look, the monster says goodbye to the human and launches its final blow. The scythe releases a massive wave of purple energy towards our hero. Feeling the pain, he wonders if it's all over for him in that place. At that moment, he remembers the image of his sister calling for him. With his last ounce of strength, he whispers his sister's name. The skeleton monster then smiles maliciously, ready to finish the fight. Suddenly, blue energy chains trap the skeleton, which understands nothing. Our hero is completely shocked by the turn of events and doesn't know what happened. Looking back, he tries to find out where that unexpected help came from. To his surprise, it was his cute partner who used the magic to trap the monster. His partner says that was his last resort to save the young man's life. At this, the partner begins to glow intensely with a very strong blue light. The cute creature's body is covered by a powerful blue electrical energy. A blinding wave of energy occurs. The blue light blinds everything around in the dungeon. Eyes like the protagonist's appear. A hooded man holding an energy sword appears in front of the protagonist. With a different voice, the mysterious figure begins to speak calmly. He says it would be a problem if the protagonist ended up dying in that place. With that, his future version activates a powerful magic to rewind everything around. Our protagonist is shocked and feels time moving in a strange way. He then realizes that time is flowing backward, and the monster's attack recedes. Suddenly, everything changes, and the protagonist finds himself falling into a bizarre space. With his sword, he hits an invisible barrier that begins to break in the air. Floating in the air, the protagonist wonders what this place is. Soon after, the arena floor begins to crack and shatter completely. Large pieces of the dungeon float through space, and everything seems to be rebuilding itself. The hero then lands safely and faces the powerful skeletal monster before him. Both the protagonist and the creature are very confused by the change. The enemy wonders if that wasn't a divine-level spell used against him. Suddenly, the mysterious figure lands on the ground next to our protagonist. It was his older version, who says it's been a while since he had that appearance. The monster gets angry at the scene and shouts that the show's introduction is finally over. The skeletal monster then releases a purple energy and summons its magical creations. From the energy, several bizarre angels with evil smiles on their faces emerge. Faced with an army, the future version says the monsters are rank A or higher. With that, his older self tells the boy to get up, as he will take care of the minions. Our protagonist is shocked by the order to fight the boss alone. He then says the enemy is of divine rank and too strong to be defeated, but his older version says he now understands and controls space-time magic. With a smile, he finishes by saying that in the end, they are the same person. Hearing the words, the young hero seems to finally understand what he needs to do. With determination, he agrees to the plan and prepares for the great battle. At this, the entity says it will tell him the attack plan for them to defeat the enemy. The two then prepare to fight, while the monster watches them from a distance. The creature points in their direction and orders its army to attack without mercy. With that, all the dark angels fly towards the two of them. Suddenly, a huge explosion of blue energy hits the monsters squarely. With that, the duo charges with everything they have to start the battle against the enemies. With a smile, the older version faces the horde of dark angels before him. He then uses the gravity territory to trap all the enemies in the air. With that, the dark angels are paralyzed, unable to move or attack. Floating in the air, the entity taunts the monsters to come and fight him. He then challenges all the minions to come at him at once. Meanwhile, our hero charges with his sword to attack the main boss. On the way, he needs to dodge some minions who manage to escape. Even so, the young man doesn't stop and continues running towards the skeletal monster. His future version then uses an acceleration field to help with the run. With that, the protagonist gains incredible speed and thanks his partner for the the help. Getting close, the monster calls him an inferior and disgusting life form. But with a determined look, the hero responds by telling the enemy to kick the bucket. The boss then activates the dimension of curses to try to stop the young man's attack. However, the hero says he's seen this technique before and won't fall for it again. With that, the protagonist breaks through the barrier and the monster is shocked. His eyes glow intensely and he charges with a cry of determination. Furious, the enemy calls him an inferior and insolent being for challenging him like this. The young man decides that attacking indirectly is a waste of time and needs to go straight for it. So he intends to attack the monster directly, and soon the two cross blades. His sword collides with the creature's energy and causes large beams. At that moment, the hero uses the powerful ability called Chaos Meteor. The blow hits squarely, and the monster screams in pain from the attack's impact. But the enemy retaliates and uses the Blade of Curses to finish off the protagonist. The attack hits the young man squarely, and he screams as he feels the powerful blow on his body. With the impact, he is thrown backward and begins to bleed heavily from his mouth and chest. At this, the monster notices several avatars of the protagonist appearing and doesn't understand anything. With this technique, the hero can share and reduce the damage he received. Even injured, the young man charges with everything he has for one last, desperate final attack. With a battle cry and glowing eyes, he swears he will defeat the enemy. The hero hits the monster with a devastating blow, causing a huge explosion. He charged forward again, catching the Soul Reaper off guard. He poured every last bit of his strength into his next move, successfully driving his sword into the creature's heart. The Soul Reaper let out a piercing scream, and for a moment, Haruto believed he had won, but then it twisted its face into a smile that sent a shiver down his spine. He realized with a start that it didn't have a heart, and before he could even process it, the creature sliced him clean in two. His future self cried out his name in alarm. The Soul Reaper chuckled, mocking them for thinking its weak spot was something as simple as its heart. It taunted them, revealing that one of the special abilities of underworld gods is faking a weak point to trick their enemies. The creature sneered at how foolish humans were. Haruto's bisected body collapsed to the ground as the Soul Reaper laughed triumphantly, commanding its swarm of little monsters to press forward. It jeered at his future self, pointing out that he was the only one left. Stuttering in shock, Haruto's future self declared it was impossible and desperately wondered aloud what the real weak point could be. The Soul Reaper roared that a god has no weak points. It boasted that if it did have one, it would be something as untouchable as the very concept of its existence, the forbidden crown of Hades. With that, it ordered its monsters to swarm Haruto's future self, declaring that it wouldn't listen to any pleas for mercy. But Haruto's future self stayed surprisingly calm, asking his past self if he'd heard that, because now they knew what to do. Suddenly, the real Haruto appeared right behind the Soul Reaper, his sword pointed straight at its head. He confirmed that he'd gotten the message. The Soul Reaper spun around, utterly baffled and shouting that it couldn't be possible. After all, it had just sliced him in half a moment ago. Haruto explained that the one it cut down was just a copy. When the Soul Reaper had attacked his torso, he'd used Avatar Replay to create a double and send it charging ahead, while the real Haruto had been lying on the floor the entire time. Still not understanding, the Soul Reaper yelled that Haruto should have died from a direct hit from its divine power. Haruto admitted that it was definitely a fatal blow. However, his future self had cast a space-time skill called Rollback on him just before the attack landed. Time had literally rewound for Haruto just before the moment of his death. His future self added that the skill was incredibly complex and could only be used once on the same person. Luckily for them, their plan had worked out perfectly. The Soul Reaper lunged for Haruto, but his future self unleashed Stop Chain, level 78, to bind the creature. He then asked Haruto if they should get ready for the grand finale. Haruto turned to the Soul Reaper, confirming that it had mentioned the crown above its head was its weak point. His future self chimed in, promising that they would completely obliterate it. He added they would smash that creepy head of its into tiny pieces. Haruto took a deep breath, and a memory of his little sister thanking him for everything and telling him she loved him flashed through his mind. The memories surged through him, boosting his power. With his determination renewed, he unleashed his full strength. In a single mighty swing, he sliced off the Soul Reaper's head. He then leaped into the air, and moving with incredible speed, chopped its head into countless small fragments. The Soul Reaper's head vanished completely, and its body crumpled to the ground, finally defeated. As it fell, all the little monsters disappeared along with it. Haruto landed back on his feet just as a system message appeared, announcing that he had defeated the god of the underworld, the Soul Reaper. He had gained 120,000 experience points and 35 million credits. He turned to his future self and reported that the target had been eliminated. At that very moment, a staircase materialized, leading up to the top floor. His future self said it was finally time to go, and Haruto agreed, walking over to him. Haruto then studied his older self, himself and asked with a touch of concern if that's really what he was going to look like when he got older. His future self jokingly threatened to hit him. Haruto quickly clarified that he just meant it would have been nice if his future self had helped out from the beginning. As they started climbing the stairs, his future self reminded him that he was only supposed to be a last resort, and that the situation was more complicated than it seemed. He cut the conversation short, saying they didn't have much time before the space-time hole opened, and grabbed Haruto's hand tightly, telling him seriously that they needed to hurry. They stepped onto the top floor of the Sky Castle dungeon, which was shrouded in a thick fog. His future self immediately looked up and shouted to Haruto that it was there. They both watched as the sky started to crack and then explode with energy. Floating in the middle of all the chaos was a little girl, their sister, Ria. His future self told him that the hole would stay connected to their world for another 9 minutes and 48 seconds, so they should take their time and not rush. As his future self floated toward the hole, he suddenly remembered something and activated the sped-up field skill, creating circles of energy as he rose. Haruto called out, and they both raced upward. As they got closer to the hole, Haruto yelled for Ria. She opened her eyes, saw him, and reached out as he shouted that he was right there. But his future self told him to stay calm, explaining that the inside of the space-time hole was disconnected from the world's laws of cause and effect, which meant only space-time magic would work. His future self then flew into the hole, telling Haruto he would use his magic to push Ria out, so Haruto needed to be ready to catch her. Positioning himself behind Ria, his future self focused all his space-time power into his hands and pushed with all his might to get her out. Ria drifted closer to the edge of the hole, and Haruto waited, his vision blurry as he strained to see her. She called out to him, calling him her big brother, but then to his horror, the hole started to close. Shocked, Haruto yelled to his future self, asking what was happening. His future self shouted back, just as stunned that it was way too soon for the hole to be closing. Panic began to set in as he saw how quickly it was shrinking, with Ria dangerously close to being caught. In a desperate move, his future self used every last bit of his power to hold the hole open, screaming for Haruto to pull Ria out quickly. Haruto yelled back a determined yes, and used his own space-time magic to pull her toward him. As Ria got closer, his future self struggled to keep the hole from collapsing. His future self warned him that if Ria's body got trapped in the closing hole, she would be torn to pieces. And even if she got out, she would die from the fall if he failed to catch her. Haruto focused intensely, replying that he understood. As Ria finally cleared the hole and started to fall, she reached out for him, and he reached back. He managed to grab her hand and pull her into a tight embrace, then shouted for his future self to hurry up and come back, but there was no answer. Confused, Haruto asked what was wrong and urged him to hurry. His future self, however, just smiled and told him that this was where they had to say goodbye. Haruto, completely bewildered, asked what he was talking about. His future self explained that he had hit his limit and couldn't hold his form any longer. He added that he'd used up all the Chronos factor he had stored inside him with that last stunt and didn't have enough power to get back to where he came from. Haruto tried to say something, but his future self interrupted, saying his name seriously. He told Haruto that he hadn't been a very good student, always complaining, making silly mistakes, and just when it seemed like he was growing, his emotions would get the best of him and lead to more screw-ups. But despite all that, he had no regrets fighting with him because Haruto was such a human and kind-hearted person. His future self then told him that the space-time hole would never open again, making this their final farewell. Devastated, Haruto yelled for him to wait, insisting that this couldn't be happening. But his future self placed all his hopes on Haruto, telling him to save their world and his place in it. Clenching his teeth through the pain, Haruto tearfully agreed, promising he would take on the responsibility. His future self chuckled softly, reminding him that it was a promise. Turning to Ria, he reassured her that she was safe now, calling her a young lady. Ria, however, asked if he might also be her brother. The question caught his future self by surprise, and he remembered how warm, lovely, and sweet Ria had been to him. He smiled gently at her and welcomed her home. Then, as the space-time hole finally closed, Haruto's future self vanished right along with it. When the hole was completely gone, Haruto clutched his chest in agony and let out a loud cry, mourning the loss of someone so incredibly important to him. In that moment, Haruto had achieved a great victory, but also suffered a profound loss. The day after clearing the Tokyo Tower Sky Castle dungeon, Haruto walked into his classroom at the Adventurer Cultivation Agency's division. He was shocked when all the girls in the room rushed over to him, excitedly saying they had been waiting for him. Confused, he saw that even seniors from the third year were there. One of the girls stepped up and, speaking for the Ruga Victims Association, expressed their deepest thanks, with all of them chiming in their gratitude. The girls started talking all at once about how relieved they were that the disgusting sex offender Ryuga had been beaten to a pulp and how they could finally sleep without crying. One girl pointed at him, declaring him their savior and questioning who could have ever given him the nickname God of Plagues. Awkwardly, Haruto stammered for them to stop, thinking to himself that all he wanted was a quiet, peaceful life. Suddenly, someone else approached him, and he was surprised to see it was Yuzuki. She bowed and said that, as a representative of the student council, she wanted to apologize for what had happened with the president. He told her there was no need to worry about it since it had nothing to do with her, but she insisted she couldn't just let it slide, especially since she was about to become the new student council president. Looking him straight in the eye, Yuzuki asked if he would be interested in helping the school from the inside, which left him confused. She explained she was recruiting for the student council and wanted him to guide the students as the leader of the council's Mage security guard. The whole class buzzed with excitement at her offer, but Haruto turned her down, saying he was fine where he was and would pass, which shocked Yuzuki. She then grabbed his hand and begged him, saying she would do anything if he just agreed. Rin couldn't believe Yuzuki was being so forward with Haruto and felt dizzy with shock, stammering his name. Akemi tried to comfort Rin, telling her it was okay. One of the other girls reminded Yuzuki that class was about to start and gently pulled her away from Haruto. Before she left, Yuzuki shouted that they would continue their talk at lunch and ordered him to stay in the classroom, citing her new authority as the student council president. Haruto just sighed and scratched his head, completely exasperated. During the lunch break, Haruto was on the rooftop sitting on a bench while checking the system. He saw that his level was 98, his rank was C, and the system was recommending he upgrade to a higher adventurer rank. His skills included swordsmanship at level 64 and spacetime magic at level 82, with high stats all around. He also noticed he had 5 new spells and thought to himself that with stats like these he felt invincible. It made sense after all the enemies he'd taken down. He was then stunned to see his total credits had reached 43 million, a fortune that no normal high school student should have. As he was taking a bite of his burger, he heard the sound of people rushing up to the rooftop. Yuzuki burst onto the scene, loudly asking where he was. The girls started looking around, but couldn't find him anywhere. Frustrated, Yuzuki angrily reminded the others that she had specifically told Haruto to wait in his classroom. Deciding to check the gym next, they all left the rooftop without ever noticing him peacefully eating while watching them from above. After jumping down, Haruto knew he needed to figure out a plan for dealing with situations like this, or his life was going to get a lot harder. He then turned around on the bench to ask his future self for advice, but when he looked, he remembered his future self was gone. The painful memory of his absence washed over him again. After school, Haruto headed back to his apartment with a bag of food. He walked up the stairs and punched in the code to his apartment door. As he opened it, he was stunned to hear Ria shout that he was late and that she'd been waiting for a long time. She then welcomed him home. He smiled and replied, "Your big brother is home." Ria proudly showed him the dinner she had cooked, declaring it was a homemade meal from his cute little sister, which left him amazed. Then, she noticed the bag in his hand and asked if he'd bought something from the convenience store. He glanced at the bag, realizing he had just picked it up out of habit. Ria gently chided him, saying he should try not to buy unnecessary things on his own. He nodded, admitting she had a point. She then reminded him that they would be living together from now on and that they needed to save money. Surprised by this, he agreed, promising he would do just that. Ria stepped closer, smiled softly, and once again welcomed him home. He was taken aback for a second as the memory of his future self welcoming Ria home flashed in his mind. He smiled and told her, "It's good to be home." He put the plastic bag on the table as Ria suddenly remembered something. Before they ate dinner, they both walked over to their family picture. Ria thanked their parents for raising them and asked them to continue watching over them, which made him smile warmly at his little sister. Then, Ria spotted the scarf she had made for him. She couldn't believe he had kept it for so long, and he replied, "Of course I did." She reminded him it was June, the middle of summer, but he playfully told her that he gets cold easily, as she already knew. After he changed his clothes, they both sat down at the table. Ria proudly presented the meal as her own homemade cooking. He smiled, thanked her for the food, and took a bite. She eagerly asked him how it was and if he liked it. He told her it was absolutely delicious. Ria still couldn't quite believe she was really back and asked if she was truly home. He reassured her, saying, "She's truly home." He also told her he had already submitted all the necessary paperwork to the government office to let them know his little sister was, in fact, alive. She thanked him and mentioned that she had lost 2 years and really needed to catch up on her studies. Haruto added that this also included her dance academy. Worried, she asked if they could afford it. He told her not to worry about money at all, not now and not ever again, even far into the future. He teased her, saying she could go to the dance academy even after she became a granny. Ria laughed and asked what he even meant by that. She then looked over at the teddy bear and asked if it was right that they owed everything to the future version of him. Haruto confirmed it, saying they had a lot to be thankful for. He then remembered his future self's final request to save the world, which made him stare at the teddy bear and wonder how he was supposed to even start. At that moment, Ria remembered something was in her pocket. She recalled that it had been inside her clothes when he rescued her. She pulled out a small glowing glowing cube and asked if he knew what it was. Haruto was surprised to see it was a message cube. As soon as he activated it, the cube shot out a bright light, and his teddy bear, now possessed by his future self's essence, appeared, shocking him completely. His future self started speaking through the teddy, saying that if Haruto was seeing this, it meant he was no longer in this world. He guessed that Haruto was probably feeling lost and wondering how to save the world now that he was gone. Haruto listened in disbelief as his future self confidently explained that, as the strongest, peerless warrior, he had of course made preparations in case something like this happened. Then, with a hint of smugness, his future self asked if Haruto agreed that he was totally awesome and told him to feel free to praise him. Haruto couldn't help but think that his future self shouldn't be so cocky, even in a recorded message. His future self then became serious, telling Haruto he would transfer a letter from the future, version 2, to his storage. He urged Haruto to use it to save the world and called him a savior, asking if he understood. The message cube then powered down, transferring the letter for becoming a space-time mage, version 2, into his storage. The system displayed a message from his future self, reminding him not to slack off just because he wasn't around to watch him anymore. Seeing his future self in the system lifted his spirits, and he smiled. Ria, noticing his smile, asked if people were really calling him a savior these days, and commented on how cool that sounded. He just shrugged it off, saying it was nothing, just a result of a bunch of different things happening. Meanwhile, at the Adventurer Guild's general headquarters, a meeting was underway on the top floor, where the 7 sages, all S-rank adventurers, were gathered. The chief of the Minato branch, Kurigane, also known as Iron, addressed the group. He suggested they move to the next item on the agenda, the extermination of the Chaos Dragon at Nakano's train yard, the unauthorized entry into the Shinjuku branch's synthesis facility, which was restricted to adventurers of a certain rank or higher, and the unauthorized raid of Tokyo Tower's Sky Castle dungeon. He stressed that these 3 criminal acts, all happening in the last few days, were very likely done by the same person, and they needed to find the culprit immediately. The 5th sage, known as the King of Kings, Tantalum, responded by asking if the Sky Castle dungeon had been properly checked, since it might be as difficult as an S-rank dungeon. The 2nd sage, Platinum, also known as the Oracle Deliverer, asked if a single person had really managed to raid a dungeon like that. The 6th sage, Kiryu Miramasa, known as the Exalted Magic Swordsman, replied that it seemed impossible. The 3rd sage, 15-0 Oz, stayed silent during the discussion. The 1st sage, Q, also known as the Omni Elemental, remarked that these actions could be seen as a direct challenge to the Adventurer Guild's authority, which he found quite interesting. The 4th sage, Siren, also known as the Psycho Witch, laughed and wondered what kind of darkness the person might be hiding. Finally, the 7th sage, Tellurium, known as Akashic Vision, announced that an observation target had been acquired. Kurigane then addressed the group, saying he believed all 7 sages understood how serious the situation was. He proposed that as soon as they found the unknown adventurer, they should recruit them into the guild's executive staff and prepare them to be a warrior in the upcoming Otherworld War. With that, Kurigane declared the 7 sages meeting over. The next day, on a peaceful street, a mother and her child were walking happily together. The mother got distracted by some beautiful flowers on the side of the road, while the child, mesmerized by a bright blue butterfly, started chasing it without her mother noticing. As the child ran into the street, a truck came speeding toward her, and the driver yelled in shock when he saw her in his path. The mother heard the truck's horn and, in a moment of horror, saw her daughter standing in the middle of the road. She ran toward her child, but it was too late. The truck was about to hit her. The child's balloons floated up into the air as tragedy was about to strike. But then, in a flash, he appeared. Haruto was standing in front of the mother, holding the child safely in his arms. The mother was in shock, unable to process what had just happened. When she confirmed it was really her daughter, she rushed over to them, tears streaming down her face. Haruto gently asked the child if she was scared, and softly told her not to worry because she was safe now. Haruto carefully put the child down, and the little girl thanked him. Her mother immediately hugged her, shouting about how relieved she was that her daughter was safe. Haruto smiled, thinking about how he had managed to save the child just in the nick of time. When he first saw her, he was afraid he wouldn't make it, but with his space-time magic he did, though he had to sacrifice the girl's balloon and his own drink in the process. It was a small price to pay for saving a life. He clenched his fist, feeling a sense of satisfaction from using his powers for good. The mother looked at him and said she was coming right over to thank him properly, but Haruto waved it off, telling her it wasn't necessary. She insisted, saying an act like that couldn't just be ignored, and that he should at least tell her his name. However, Haruto politely declined, saying he'd rather she just forget the whole thing because he didn't want to stand out any more than he already did. Grabbing his school bag, he told them he had to run. The mother shouted for him to wait, but he was already dashing off at high speed, knowing he'd be late if he didn't hurry. A moment later, he arrived at the Adventurer Cultivation Agency's high school division. He jumped from one building building to another until he landed safely on his classroom's rooftop. Glancing down, he saw the student council gathered at the entrance, asking each other if they had seen Haruto. He sighed in frustration and went to his classroom, but he couldn't ignore the whispers and stares from his classmates. He felt awkward, thinking that he didn't even need to use his flow of time skill to know he was being watched like a hawk. Meanwhile, Rin was watching him from the side, feeling like he was slipping further and further away from her. It was just like that time she had run into him after leaving the Adventurers Guild. She remembered a moment at the Shinjuku Metropolitan Government Office branch of the Adventurers Guild. There, she had introduced herself as a student from the Cultivation Agency's school in the Nakano district and reported that she had finished a B-rank dungeon exploration. The man at the counter thanked her for her hard work. As she was about to leave, he suddenly asked if a student named Haruto went to her school. Surprised, she said that she did know a student with that name. The man explained that Takamine from the Weapon Synthesis Laboratory had come up with a new weapon synthesis theory based on something called the Kuju theory. He added that when he asked Takamine about it, Takamine mentioned that a student from Nakano had given him the clue that helped him develop it. The man remarked that it all sounded pretty unbelievable. Rin stared at Haruto, wondering just how far he was planning to go. After their class, the professor dismissed them for the morning, reminding them about the exchange student who would be joining them next week. During the lunch break, Haruto was back on the rooftop, going over the messages his future self had left him. One of the messages played, with his future self advising him to first focus on honing his skills as a swordsman. In the end, the message said that space-time magic is just a supportive, auxiliary type of magic. His true talents were in his sword, and if he wanted to become a great space-time mage like him, he first had to live by the sword. The message concluded by saying there would come a time when he'd understand why he was telling him this, but for now, that was all. The message then vanished, and Haruto lay on the bench, thinking about how cryptic his future self always was. He wished his future self would just explain things more clearly. Elsewhere, someone powerful had appeared at their school. The man used his stealing steps and flash stride skills to magically shorten the distance as he moved. Haruto was suddenly shocked when he sensed the presence, and when he looked back, he saw a man standing on the rooftop. Instantly, Haruto pulled his sword from his storage and stood up to face the man, demanding to know who he was. The man, who was none other than Kuryu Mirimasa, the sixth sage and exalted magic swordsman, asked Haruto if he was that person and stated that he wanted to borrow his strength. Mirimasa then looked at him seriously and said, "The destruction of the world is almost upon us." Haruto realized he hadn't sensed Mirimasa's presence at all until he was right in front of him. This was no ordinary person. Mirimasa wasn't just some average guy. Haruto then asked Mirimasa if he really meant the destruction of the world and what exactly he was talking about. Mirimasa replied that it was just as it sounded. In the near future, everything Haruto held dear would be turned to nothing and disappear. This shocked Haruto, who immediately thought of Ria. He pointed his sword at Mirimasa, saying he couldn't just believe a claim like that, especially since he didn't even know who Mirimasa was or what kind of person he might be. He added that Mirimasa had just shown up out of nowhere and started making what sounded like threats, reminding him of a certain someone, his future self, whom he didn't particularly like. Haruto then declared that he would act based on his own thoughts and make his own choices. Mirimasa smiled at this and pulled out a picture, asking Haruto if he still felt the same after seeing it. Haruto snapped when he realized the picture was of Ria practicing her dancing. In a burst of anger, he unleashed a powerful aura, which surprised Mirimasa. It wasn't just any fighting spirit, it was an abnormal one. However, Mirimasa recognized that Haruto had the makings of a true swordsman. He assured Haruto that he had only taken the photo as part of a background check and hadn't touched his sister. Mirimasa then drew his sword, swearing on his swordmaster's name that he meant no harm. He swiftly walked past Haruto, adding that if it took a fight to convince him, he would gladly accept. This only made Haruto angrier. He told Mirimasa that he had crossed a line. Mirimasa jumped back, warning Haruto that whatever happened next, he shouldn't regret it later. As they got ready to fight, Mirimasa used his killing intent skill. Haruto was shocked to see that there was no Chronos factor around Mirimasa, which meant he wouldn't be able to see the flow of time. Noticing Haruto's silence, Mirimasa asked if something was wrong and told him that ready or not, he was coming. Mirimasa then vanished in a blur and reappeared right in front of Haruto, shocking him. Mirimasa explained that his killing intent didn't mean revealing his intention to kill, but rather the opposite. It meant killing his own aura or presence. Mirimasa then swung his sword at Haruto, who barely managed to jump, twist in the air, and dodge the attack. Haruto realized that Mirimasa's killer's intent was removing the Chronos factor from his immediate area. Haruto asked Mirimasa why he was explaining how his skills worked, jokingly wondering if he was some kind of half-wit villain from a manga. Mirimasa calmly replied that he was telling him because he could still win, even after giving away his secrets. He explained that by killing his presence, he could always seize the initiative from his opponent. Suddenly, Mirimasa appeared behind Haruto Haruto without him noticing. As Haruto turned to face him, Mirimasa swung his sword and managed to slash him. Mirimasa smiled, thinking he had won. But then, to his shock, Haruto's figure slowly faded away. It had been a clone created with his avatar replay skill. The real Haruto appeared behind Mirimasa and swung his sword down. But Mirimasa bent his body just in time to dodge the attack, wondering what was going on. Frustrated that he hadn't landed the hit, Haruto watched as Mirimasa jumped back to create some distance. Mirimasa, still confused, realized that he should have definitely cut Haruto and wondered if it was more than just an afterimage. As Mirimasa stood up, 2 buttons fell off his coat from the force of Haruto's earlier attack. Seizing the moment, Haruto used his quick body skill to dash toward Mirimasa at high speed. As he swung his sword, Mirimasa, realizing the power Haruto had, smiled, thinking this was getting interesting. Mirimasa blocked Haruto's sword with his own, and the force between their weapons sent sparks flying. Mirimasa looked at Haruto, asking what he would do next. Haruto, knowing he couldn't rely on seeing the flow of time, decided to try a different technique. He pushed Mirimasa's sword slightly and activated his stop chain skill, which immobilized Mirimasa and his sword. Mirimasa was shocked as he found himself completely restrained. Haruto gathered some of his power into his fist, and Mirimasa was even more surprised when Haruto bent down to the side and launched a punch using his Chrono Fist skill. Stunned for a moment, Mirimasa let go of his sword and managed to activate his steel body skill just in time. Haruto's punch slammed into Mirimasa, causing a loud explosion between them and sending Mirimasa flying, though he remained unharmed. Mirimasa marveled at the power of Haruto's attack, realizing it wasn't just a random punch. He then stared at Haruto, recognizing him as an awakened one. Haruto cursed in frustration, realizing that even his last attack hadn't worked. He was confused when Mirimasa suddenly suggested they stop. Mirimasa then walked calmly toward Haruto, sincerely apologizing for what he had said about his sister. He bowed deeply, begging for forgiveness for his willful trespass, and swearing he would never do anything like it again. Haruto was stunned and asked what was going on. Mirimasa simply grabbed his sword and said that he would be leaving now. Haruto shouted after him, demanding to know why he was deciding this on his own, and insisting that their match wasn't over yet. Mirimasa replied that, of course, it wasn't settled, and they should continue it at his school. Haruto, more confused than ever, asked what he meant by his school. Mirimasa explained that Haruto had a unique talent, but was still too weak and hadn't reached the level Mirimasa wanted him to be at. He suggested that they learn the mysteries of the sword at his school to help Haruto become stronger. Haruto then remembered his future self's message, telling him that his true talent lay in the sword, and that if he wanted to become a great space-time mage, he had to first live by the sword. Haruto reminded Mirimasa that he still couldn't trust him just like that. Mirimasa agreed, but pointed out that he was definitely stronger than Haruto right now, asking if that wasn't reason enough. Mirimasa then told Haruto that he would be waiting for him at his school before disappearing. Confused, Haruto felt something in his pocket and pulled out an exchange student permit between his school and Azabu's school. He realized that Mirimasa must have slipped it into his pocket during their fight. Understanding that Mirimasa was referring to Azabu as his school, Haruto furiously thought that Mirimasa definitely had a way of getting under his skin. Meanwhile, Mirimasa stood at the entrance of the school, adjusting his coat. He thought to himself that Haruto was the real deal. Before the 7 sages had the chance to use Haruto as a disposable pawn, Mirimasa was determined to train him well. Then, once Haruto joined the 7 sages, he would help him overthrow them and seize their power. Mirimasa silently vowed to ruin Kurigane's plans. On the rooftop, Haruto examined the exchange student permit. It stated that the objective was to improve the true strength of adventurers from every school. The duration was listed as July 1st to 13th, 2054. The application requirements included being a student enrolled in a school affiliated with the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, with student council members receiving grade A treatment and perks at the exchange school. As he was reading, Yuzuki suddenly burst onto the rooftop, shouting that she had found him and that today, for sure, he would be joining their student council. Haruto stood up, saying that her timing was perfect, and casually told Yuzuki that he was in. She froze in shock, stunned that he had actually agreed to join the student council. A week later, at the Adventurer Cultivation Agency's Azabu branch, Haruto was walking with Yuzuki. She expressed how impressed she was, not only because he had joined the student council, but also because he wanted to go with her to Azabu's school as an exchange student. He replied that it was a given as a student council member, though in truth, he was mostly motivated by the grade A perks mentioned in the document. Yuzuki explained that Azabu's school was known for producing many S-rank adventurers and was regarded as the finest education and training institution in Japan. She added that it was a super elite school requiring a magic deviation value of over 70 for admission. Before entering the building, Yuzuki turned back to him excitedly, encouraging him to do their best so as not to fall fall behind. He stutteringly agreed, feeling a bit overwhelmed as they stepped inside and found themselves in a huge lounge. Yuzuki suggested they greet the board chairman first. As they walked through the lounge, Haruto noticed the students inside were eyeing them curiously, wondering where these two strangers had come from. But he decided not to worry about it and resolved to move at his own pace. Yuzuki, noticing his discomfort, stutteringly reassured him that there was no need to be afraid because she was right there with him. He agreed, but couldn't help wondering if Yuzuki would really be alright in this place. On the 20th floor, they arrived at the board chairman's office. Yuzuki pointed it out and Haruto knocked on the door. When they entered, Muramasa was sitting in the middle of the room, waiting for them. He introduced himself as the school's board chairman, leaving Haruto in disbelief that this was really Muramasa's school. Muramasa stood up and welcomed them to Azabu's school, explaining that amidst these times when mages were at their golden age, the school strictly specialized in cultivating swordsmanship. Even within the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, they were one of a kind. He added that instead of magic duels, sword duels were conducted, and throughout the exchange student program, he expected them to rise to the top of the school's rankings through dueling. Haruto was shocked when Muramasa directly pointed at him, but before he could react, Yuzuki stutteringly told Muramasa to wait a minute, insisting that nothing like that was supposed to be part of the exchange student program activities. However, Haruto asked Muramasa if he would be able to fight him again if he participated, leaving Yuzuki confused and stuttering, asking what he meant by again. Muramasa explained that the student who reaches the first place in the rankings earns the right to challenge the strongest individual at Azabu's school himself. Haruto, thrilled by this, declared that this was exactly what he wanted to hear, and that he would climb to the top and defeat Muramasa as quickly as possible so he could go home sooner, shocking Yuzuki and making her panic. Haruto told Muramasa that his only complaint was that their previous fight had ended halfway, and that once they settled it, he wouldn't have any reason to stay. Muramasa replied that he had no problem with that, and that the school respected any swordsman aiming for the top, regardless of their attitude or stance. Muramasa then opened a system and provided them with the school's student IDs and class schedules, explaining that with these, they would be able to access the school's facilities and equipment, enjoying greater perks as student council members. Haruto saw that his swordsman course adventurer level was 98, placing him at 4,395th out of 14,000 in Azabu's school ranking, with access to greater privileges. He wondered if the ranking system worked the same as Nakano's, pondering whether he should challenge higher-ranked students one after the other to rise quickly. After settling everything, Muramasa wished them success and said goodbye. As they walked down the corridor, Yuzuki exclaimed that the situation was outrageous, asking how she was supposed to aim for the top of the school rankings. Haruto agreed, telling her that there was no need for the newly appointed Ms. President to do that in the first place. He then thought about the quickest way to move up the rankings, considering places where high-ranking students might gather, such as special lecture halls, student council rooms, duel arenas, the martial arts club building, the lessons building, the cafeteria, the event hall, and even the board chairman's office. With a determined smile, Haruto decided to visit those places. A moment later, in the cafeteria on the second floor of the Adventurer Cultivation Agency, a crowd of students gathered to eat. Yuzuki asked him if he forgot to have breakfast that morning, to which he simply replied, yes. Suddenly, a virtual robot appeared beside them, welcoming them and asking if they were exchange students from another part of Japan. The robot explained that the school's motto is, "Your breakfast determines your entire day," and encouraged all students to have a hearty breakfast. If they didn't get a chance to eat at home, they were welcome to enjoy as much as they wanted here. He noticed that a holographic maid was scanning their student IDs and playing targeted announcements for them. Yuzuki, surprised by the lavish menu, asked if everything was free, marveling at how well-funded schools really were. She picked up a pair of tongs and declared that it was time for a thorough inspection. He encouraged her to go ahead, and she began examining the food. Delighted by the full automation and perfectly balanced menu of nutrients and calories, she exclaimed that this was her dream cafeteria, the one she'd only imagined until now, and insisted that they needed to adopt this system at their own school immediately, as he observed the new student council president's eccentricity. He was reminded of his real reason for coming to the cafeteria. Suddenly, a loud crash caught his attention, followed by a man's voice sneering that someone else had something unworthy of them. Looking to the side, he saw a group of men harassing a lone student. The student nervously asked them to stop, but the group's leader scoffed, saying it would be a waste on a wuss like him as he held up a sword. The student begged them to give it back, but the leader yelled for him to shut up, claiming this was his punishment for sitting in the Raidu faction's seats without permission. Just as Haruto suspected, bullies were present even here. He knew that no matter how elite a school is, there will always be people like this, and teachers can't be everywhere. School cafeterias were common hotspots for this behavior, but he felt fortunate to encounter them right away. It meant he he could deal with them sooner. The leader taunted the student, saying he was not allowed in the cafeteria unless his ranking was at least in the 2-digit range, and mockingly asked if he didn't know that rule. The student stammered that seating shouldn't matter in the cafeteria, but the leader grabbed him, shouting that it did, calling him the god of plagues with 0 magic capacity, a phrase that surprised Haruto. The leader then shoved the student to the floor, and the crowd laughed at the scene, which prompted Haruto to decide it was time to step in. The leader smirked, taunting the student by saying that giving him the sword would be like casting pearls before swine, so he'd keep it instead. One of the other bullies mentioned that the sword looked valuable, and if they took it to the guild shop, the Raidu faction's budget would skyrocket. The leader waved his hand dismissively, telling the man he could leave, but the man, stammering yet defiant, shouted back, demanding the return of his sword, explaining that it was a precious possession given to him by his father. This angered the leader, who threw a punch, yelling that he didn't care about the man's personal circumstances. The man braced himself, tilting his head to take the hit, only for the leader's punch to be stopped mid-air. Haruto had stepped in, blocking the punch with a single hand, leaving both the leader and the victim stunned. The leader yelled, demanding to know who Haruto was. Shocked that his punch was stopped so effortlessly, Haruto calmly replied that he was an exchange student from Nakano School, and he was looking for the student with the highest rank in this school. He then asked the leader directly where he could find that person. The leader, defiant, shouted that he had no reason to give him that information. In response, Haruto tightened his grip on the leader's fist, forcing him to his knees and making him cry out in pain. Haruto insisted, saying that the quickest way to find the top-ranked student was to ask someone hot-blooded like him. The leader's minions panicked, asking Haruto what he just did and what he wanted, but Haruto only glared at them, repeating his question about where he could find the highest-ranking student. The leader, now visibly terrified, hesitated. Suddenly, a booming voice interrupted, saying, "That's enough!" A sword was launched toward Haruto, and he barely jumped back in time to dodge it. Looking up, Haruto sensed the faint impression of an invisible blade aimed at him, as if it nearly sliced him. The true leader of the Raidu faction, Raidu Nobunaga, had arrived with his members. Nobunaga sternly warned Haruto not to bully his fellow students. Raidu Nobunaga, a third-year student who ranked 3rd in the swordsman course at Azabu School, was also the head of the Kishin swordplay style school and the leader of the Raidu faction. Although the school administration struggled with his unruly behavior, Nobunaga's skill level was nearly equal to that of the top-ranked student, making him a strong candidate for a future teaching position upon completing the program. The bullied man could hardly believe that Nobunaga, known for his formidable reputation, was now facing off with an exchange student. Nobunaga then asked how things escalated to this point, to which Haruto calmly responded that the faction members were bullying a student, pointing at the victim, and that he only stepped in to stop it. Annoyed, Nobunaga turned to his men, asking if it was true. The bullies denied it, claiming the exchange student was lying and that they were only trying to reserve seats for the faction. Frustrated, Nobunaga approached his men and punched one of them, then struck the others, leaving all 3 on the floor. Nobunaga snapped that he could tell they were lying by the shiftiness in their eyes. He then picked up the student's sword, bowed, and apologized for the trouble his faction members have caused. As the faction leader, he expressed his sincere regret on their behalf. Haruto assured Nobunaga there was no need to apologize, saying it was not a concern. Nobunaga then returned the sword to the man, who accepted it gratefully and thanked Nobunaga. Haruto was surprised that someone so upright and straightforward led the faction. Standing up, Nobunaga remarked that he'd have preferred to leave things peacefully and enjoy the day, but letting this incident go unanswered would damage the faction's dignity. He therefore challenged Haruto to a duel and asked if he accepted. The bullied student, visibly worried, advised Haruto to refuse, reminding him that Nobunaga was ranked 3rd in the school. Haruto, however, accepted the challenge without hesitation, telling Nobunaga he'd gladly take him on. Nobunaga thanked him, saying this made things easier, and walked away, adding that he'd be waiting at the arena after classes. As Nobunaga walked away, Haruto watched him for a few moments. The bullied student approached Haruto, stammering with concern, asking if he'd really be all right. The student, visibly shaken, explained that Nobunaga was the 3rd-ranked swordsman and asked why Haruto would take on such a risky challenge. Haruto responded by asking the student if he was okay with how things were. He pointed out that, if left unchecked, those bullies would harass him for the rest of high school. The man, tightly gripping his sword, replied that he was used to enduring it and hoped it would eventually stop. The sword began to emit magic, making Haruto notice it. Activating his Eye of Time, he recognized the magic inside the sword. Haruto then challenged him directly, saying he was addressing the real person inside him and asking how he felt when his sword was stolen. The man looked confused, so Haruto explained that even though he knew he couldn't win, he still acted, driven by something deeper. The man was momentarily speechless, and Haruto, frustrated, asked if he he was truly content with letting things stay as they are. After a pause, the man admitted that he didn't want to endure it anymore. He wanted to stand up to them and keep his sword safe. Haruto smiled and praised him for his resolve, then asked for his name, extending a hand. The man shook it and introduced himself as Mitsurugi Ibuki. Haruto introduced himself in return, then encouraged Ibuki to challenge the leader of the bullies to a duel. Though Ibuki looked shocked, Haruto reassured him, vowing to make sure he wins. He told Ibuki that they should both aim for victory in their respective matches, to which Ibuki nodded in agreement. Just then, Haruto's phone buzzed with a flood of messages. It was Yuzuki, asking where he'd gone and complaining that she was still eating, prompting him to sigh in exasperation. Later, in the waiting room of the arena, Yuzuki burst in, shouting, asking what Haruto was thinking by agreeing to a sword duel on his first day as an exchange student. He tried to calm her down, simply replying that a lot happened, which only frustrated her more. She demanded to know if he really thought that explanation was enough. Haruto countered by reminding her that the board chairman himself had encouraged them to aim for the top ranking, which led him to think the quickest way to rise up would be to directly challenge the third-ranked student. Yuzuki, holding her head in exasperation, said she was surprised it was so easy for him to arrange a duel. Haruto then mentioned that his goal was to reach first place in the ranking, so he could challenge the board chairman directly, defeat him, and then head home immediately afterward. Ibuki, overhearing, was stunned by his boldness and asked if he was serious. But then, calming down, Ibuki admitted that if anyone could pull it off, it might be Haruto, adding that if he defeated the board chairman, it would be a historic achievement for a Zabu school. Ibuki also mentioned that he might even earn the legendary skill cube. Intrigued, Haruto asked what a skill cube was, as it was the first he'd heard of it. Ibuki explained that Kiryu Keijimitsu, the school's founder, achieved mastery over the sword's mysteries and encoded them within a skill cube. This revelation surprised Haruto, who recalled Muramasa telling him to unlock the sword's mysteries at the school. Haruto asked Ibuki what was inside the cube specifically, and Ibuki explained that it contained a unique sword skill that only Keijimitsu himself ever mastered, the dimensional slash. Stunned, Haruto asked if this technique truly allowed one to cut through dimensions. Ibuki nodded, adding that while it was only rumored, no one had ever actually seen it in action. Haruto wondered if this skill could help his future self, feeling even more determined not to lose the duel. Clenching his fist, he declared his newfound motivation and fighting spirit. But first, he told Ibuki that he would be the opening act. Ibuki stuttered but agreed, nervously saying he'd do his best. Ibuki then mentioned that the bully was furious when he challenged him to a duel, asking Haruto if he had any secret plan to ensure his victory. Haruto reassured him, saying if he followed his instructions, he'd definitely win. He then asked Ibuki to show him his sword. Later, in the arena at the Adventurer Cultivation Agency's Azabu branch, students gathered around the stage. They were cheering as Ibuki and his opponent, the bully, faced off. The bully pointed his sword at Ibuki, calling him out for challenging him. He taunted Ibuki, promising to beat him black and blue, which visibly rattled Ibuki, but he remained silent. In the crowd, Yuzuki watched nervously and asked Haruto if Ibuki would really be alright. Haruto confidently assured her that Ibuki would be fine and was fully capable of handling this. Moments earlier, Haruto had given Ibuki specific instructions. The moment the duel began, he should unsheath his sword and perform a single fluid slash without hesitating. Confused, Ibuki had asked if that was truly all he needed to do. Haruto nodded, explaining that the bully would likely charge at him immediately, seeing him as an easy target. Haruto had then advised Ibuki to keep his eyes open, face forward, and execute a precise drawing slash without second-guessing himself. If Ibuki followed these steps, he would win. With determination, Ibuki had agreed, saying he trusted Haruto's guidance. Back in the present, Haruto watched Ibuki from the sidelines, smiling and cheering him on, telling him he could definitely do it. Meanwhile, on the opposite side of the stage, Muramasa watched the duel participants, observing the tense showdown about to unfold. The host introduced the duelists, Mitsurugi Ibuki from Class 2 Fahrenheit, ranked 3,424th in the swordsman course, and Kinju Kentaro from Class 2A, ranked 153rd. With a sarcastic tone, Kentaro told Ibuki that after he won, they should continue to get along. Ibuki was silent for a moment, then replied, "Got it," adding that if he happened to win, Kentaro should leave him alone for good. He then shouted, calling Kentaro a shithead, which infuriated Kentaro, who yelled back about Ibuki's nerve. The crowd was shocked by Ibuki's outburst, but Haruto simply smiled with pride. Ibuki took a deep breath, gripping his sword nervously as he positioned himself. Kentaro opened his inventory as the host announced the start of the match, drawing a second sword and pointing both at Ibuki. Haruto was surprised to see Kentaro wielding two swords. Thinking that he was either highly skilled or foolish, Kentaro charged toward Ibuki, exactly as Haruto had anticipated. Ibuki recalled Haruto's advice to never look away from his opponent, so he fixed his gaze firmly on Kentaro's approach. Remembering Taking the next step, he unsheathed his sword and executed a powerful drawing slash. Kentaro, caught off guard by Ibuki's speed, tried to block with both swords, but Ibuki's attack was so quick and strong that it cut through both of them. Kentaro was thrown back, crashing into the wall and coughing up blood before collapsing unconscious. His two minions were shocked, while their leader, Nobunaga, simply sighed in disappointment. The host declared Mitsurugi Ibuki the winner, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Yuzuki, amazed, told Haruto that Ibuki had really won. Haruto replied that it was expected, explaining that Ibuki's sword was actually a magic sword. Yuzuki was stunned by this revelation. Earlier, Haruto had secretly used his Eye of Time skill to glimpse the sword's properties, realizing it possessed a rare special effect. Contrary to what others thought, Ibuki didn't have zero magic capacity. The sword continuously absorbed his magic, which led to his low assessment. Additionally, the magic sword had the unique trait of releasing all the magic it absorbed from Ibuki in a single burst. Since Ibuki had been carrying the sword for 3 years without defeating a monster, it had accumulated a considerable amount of power. For some reason, Ibuki didn't seem to know that his sword was magical, but Haruto knew that, regardless, a win was a win. A short while later in the lounge, Ibuki excitedly thanked Haruto, saying his victory was all thanks to him. He expressed amazement at everything that had happened since Haruto's arrival, saying he'd been impressed over and over. Haruto downplayed his role, telling Ibuki it was all due to his own strength. He decided to tell Ibuki about the sword's magic when they had more time. Turning back, he told Ibuki it was now his turn in the arena. Back at the arena, Muramasa watched intently from above. Nobunaga told Haruto that he intended to go all out, as he was fighting for the dignity of the Raidu faction. Haruto replied confidently that he wouldn't have it any other way. They both unsheathed their swords, Nobunaga resting his sword on his shoulder while Haruto held his down at his side. They faced each other, a determined smile on each of their faces as they prepared to duel. As the host announced the start of the match, Haruto observed that Nobunaga remained stationary, calmly standing in place rather than making the first move. Yuzuki and Ibuki watched with concern, while Nobunaga's faction members, including a bandaged Kentaro, eagerly anticipated their leader's victory. Muramasa looked on silently. Haruto wondered about Nobunaga's strategy, noticing that his stance seemed to leave many openings. Though uncertain about Nobunaga's intent, Haruto resolved not to go easy on him. He dashed forward to close the distance, but was taken aback as Nobunaga began smiling, releasing a powerful and familiar pressure. Recognizing it as the same intense aura he'd encountered before, Haruto stopped himself mid-approach, activating his Eye of Time skill to analyze Nobunaga. To his surprise, he saw no Chronos factor surrounding him. He began to suspect that the top swordsman at Azabu school might use a killing intent technique, rather than relying on time-based abilities, making movement predictions based on time flow ineffective. Nobunaga then advanced slowly, stopping just within range before exhaling and activating a Kishin-style secret technique. He unleashed a formless attack, known as Aesthetics of Nature, which carved deep gashes into the stage floor with invisible blades that slashed in every direction. Realizing the danger, Haruto leapt upward to evade, but Nobunaga appeared above him in an instant, cutting off his escape. Haruto managed to block Nobunaga's sudden swing with his sword, tightening his grip and channeling his strength into the defense, which appeared to impress Nobunaga. Seizing the opportunity, Haruto launched a chrono fist toward Nobunaga's chest. Nobunaga activated Steel Body just in time, taking the blow head-on. To Haruto's shock, the attack left Nobunaga completely unharmed. Both fighters then leapt back to reassess their positions. Nobunaga noted Haruto's skill in managing the invisible slashes of the Kishin style and questioned the extent of Haruto's abilities. Haruto, speechless, realized that Nobunaga had absorbed his chrono fist without a scratch. Nobunaga then explained that his sword style emphasized not only sword mastery, but also the conditioning of the body, trained to be as resilient and sharp as a blade itself. Hearing this, Haruto took a deep breath, reminding himself to trust his instincts rather than rely on his Eye of Time in this duel. Noticing that Haruto seemed to have cleared his mind, Nobunaga adjusted his own focus. Haruto activated his quick body skill, while Nobunaga employed his stealthy steps, both enhancing their speed. Haruto dashed forward, releasing a powerful slash, but Nobunaga dodged with equal swiftness, countering with a precise swing. Haruto blocked it, then spun midair to deliver another attack. Nobunaga evaded by bending backward, anchoring himself by planting his sword into the ground. Steadying himself, he followed up with a kick that sent Haruto flying, but Haruto managed to stop himself before regaining his stance. Gripping his sword tightly, Haruto acknowledged Nobunaga's strength. Fueled by determination, he stepped forward again, confident that victory would be his. Haruto swung his sword backward for more power and launched an attack at Nobunaga, who blocked it effortlessly. Nobunaga then pushed forward, releasing a powerful slash and daring Haruto to take it head-on. Haruto swiftly jumped back to dodge, stage, and without even touching the ground, swung his sword back for another powerful strike. Nobunaga blocked this as well. The students watching were captivated, their eyes struggling to keep up with the intense duel unfolding before them. Many marveled at Nobunaga's skill, but they also wondered who this extraordinary exchange student was. Yuzuki, in a state of panic, questioned how things had escalated so quickly, shouting that they might need to review the entire exchange student program. Ibuki cheered on Haruto, while Nobunaga's faction shouted encouragement for Nobunaga. Haruto told himself that he couldn't afford to lose this match, certain that victory would be his. He needed to save his future self, and this duel was a crucial step. Nobunaga seemed to sense this determination, observing that Haruto was carrying a heavy burden. He appreciated Haruto's resolve, but, knowing his own reasons, couldn't afford to lose either. Nobunaga increased the pressure surrounding them, amplifying his strength and determination, which shocked Haruto as he felt the weight of Nobunaga's intensified aura. Then, with his own heavy purpose in mind, Nobunaga dashed forward to attack. As Nobunaga moved in, memories surfaced. At 8 years old, he had told his mother he was leaving for school, to which she'd replied warmly. When he arrived at school and entered his classroom, he found his desk scrawled with hateful words, demands for him to leave, accusations of being a delinquent and poor, and hurtful slurs. His classmates mocked him, sarcastically expressing pity and pretending to wonder who could have done such a thing. Nobunaga remained silent, sitting at his desk as his classmates laughed around him. Later, back at the apartment, he overheard his mother pleading with a man to give her more time to repay a loan. The man expressed some sympathy, acknowledging that she was only a guarantor for her absent husband, yet she was left with the debt. She apologized and promised she would find a way to raise the money soon. Seeing his mother's distress infuriated Nobunaga, so he rushed to a nearby park and unleashed his anger on a punching bag he'd hung from a tree, vowing to become strong enough to change his life and protect his family. As he grew older, Nobunaga became a boxer, winning match after match. After each fight, as he collected his earnings, he would remind himself that he needed to become even stronger, strong enough to protect the people he cared about. One day, while leaving the ring, Muramasa appeared in the hallway, identifying him as the former junior high student who had risen to an undefeated champion in the world of illegal underground boxing. Muramasa asked if he was Reidu Nobunaga, and Nobunaga responded with suspicion, demanding to know who Muramasa was. Muramasa replied that he had watched Nobunaga's match and noted his impressive physique, but warned that his potential would go to waste at this rate. Nobunaga bristled at the remark, demanding an explanation, and Muramasa coolly inquired whether Nobunaga sought money to support his family. Furious at the implication, Nobunaga pressed him further, but Muramasa only smiled, handing him an envelope with an invitation to learn the way of the sword under the Kishin style. As Nobunaga opened the envelope, Muramasa explained that the Kishin style was perfect for those who excelled in martial arts and suggested that, after mastering it, Nobunaga should seek him out. Extending a hand, Muramasa formally welcomed Nobunaga to a Zabu school, an academy specializing in swordsmanship, and offered him a full scholarship to cover his tuition. Nobunaga slapped Muramasa's hand away, crumpling the envelope in mistrust, dismissing the offer as suspicious and possibly a scam. But then, as he considered the opportunity to grow stronger, he released a surge of determination and agreed, declaring that he would do anything if it meant he could achieve the strength he desired. 2 years later, Nobunaga had achieved mastery over the Kishin style, a testament to his lifelong pursuit of strength. He began to understand why Muramasa, the board chairman, had wanted him to attend Azabu school. In a place where everything was decided by the sword, individuals with troubled pasts and rough behavior naturally gathered. It became clear that Muramasa intended for Nobunaga to unite these wayward students under his leadership, and before long, he found himself in charge of the school's delinquents. Though Muramasa remained as enigmatic as ever, he had shown Nobunaga a way to earn money, allowing him to pay off his family's debt. For this, Nobunaga felt a deep gratitude. To outsiders, the rough group Nobunaga led might appear like a gang of misfits, but to him, they represented other versions of himself, flawed individuals fighting to survive as best as they knew how. With this in mind, Nobunaga shouted confidently during the match, declaring that he had no intention of losing, catching Haruto off guard. Nobunaga then activated his Kishin-style secret technique, Scenic Beauty, which amplified the pressure emanating from his sword to a whole new level. Haruto was astonished, feeling the strength radiating from Nobunaga's blade increase dramatically. He realized that if the fight continued this way, he would be overpowered by Nobunaga's sheer force. As he locked eyes with Nobunaga, he sensed a straightforwardness in him, unmatched by any opponent he had faced before. Knowing he couldn't rely on his time flow abilities, Haruto resolved to trust his own strength and the power of his sword, which had been his faithful ally in every battle. Haruto activated his Chaos Sword skill, calling upon its power to meet Nobunaga's might head-on. He unleashed a a force that matched Nobunaga's, pouring all his energy into the blade. Recalling his future self's advice, to become a great space-time mage, he must first live by the sword. Nobunaga was caught off guard, watching as Haruto laughed in exhilaration amid the clash. Their swords collided with overwhelming force, pushing them both back. Nobunaga, understanding Haruto's joy, felt a surge of excitement himself, and they both charged forward once more, putting all their strength into their next strike. When their swords collided again, the impact caused a massive explosion, engulfing the arena in thick smoke. The crowd held its breath. Yuzuki and Ibuki looked on anxiously, as did Nobunaga's followers, all of whom were deeply concerned for their leader. Muramasa, however, remained silent, waiting calmly for the outcome. As the smoke cleared, both fighters were visible in the center of the stage. However, Nobunaga's sword lay shattered, and blood seeped from his wounds. Disbelief washed over him as he realized that Haruto had cut through his steel body, a feat he had thought impossible. As Nobunaga collapsed, he conceded to himself that Haruto's sword power was boundless, perhaps even surpassing the board chairman's. The host stammered while announcing Kyuju Haruto as the winner, leaving the crowd in stunned silence before erupting in disbelief. Yuzuki appeared dizzy from the shock, while Haruto stood calmly, gazing at Nobunaga as healers rushed to attend to him. Muramasa, observing the scene, was quietly impressed. For Haruto to defeat Nobunaga, ranked third, almost solely through swordsmanship, proved to Muramasa that Haruto was indeed the awakened one. He considered him a prime candidate for taking on the fearsome enemies that had plagued Azabu for the past 50 years. Meanwhile, Haruto looked down at his trembling hand, reflecting on the intensity of the duel. He hadn't anticipated how thrilling the experience would be, and for a moment, he simply marveled at the joy of such a hard-fought battle. Later, outside the academy, Haruto stood speechless as Nobunaga and his group bowed to him in unison, apologizing for the trouble they'd caused. Haruto replied that it was all fine now, glancing at Ibuki, who nodded in agreement. Nobunaga then raised his head, expressing his thanks for sparing them from further complications. With a grin, he threw an arm around Haruto's shoulder, confessing that, oddly enough, losing so badly felt refreshing. Haruto noted how quickly Nobunaga's mood had changed and how full of energy he seemed, but then, noticing other students watching them, he stammered, urging Nobunaga to tone it down, saying he didn't want to draw any more attention. Nobunaga pulled back with a chuckle, reassuring Haruto that there was no need to be shy. He explained that since the Raidu faction had officially lost to him, they would now stand by him and come to his aid whenever he needed it. Haruto, surprised by this declaration, nodded and replied that he understood, adding that he would certainly call on them if he ever found himself in a tight spot. Nobunaga enthusiastically agreed, assuring Haruto he could rely on them. The next day, in his apartment, Haruto watched the news. The broadcast reported that according to the Metropolitan Police Department, crime rates continued to decline nationwide, though damage from migrating monster species emerging from dungeons was increasing each year. In response, both the police and the Japan Self-Defense Force were calling for greater collaboration with the Adventurers Guild. The reporter also noted that, according to statistics from the guild, Japan's GDP had sustained an annual growth rate of over 10% since dungeons began appearing worldwide 30 years ago. After paying respects to his parents, Haruto grabbed his bag as the news continued, explaining that Japan's unique population of dungeon exploration experts had given the country an economic advantage. The government had taken proactive steps, channeling subsidies toward Japanese companies and universities to develop anti-monster equipment and magic stone technology. Rie handed Haruto his lunch, and he thanked her for preparing it. As he put on his shoes, she asked if he'd be attending Azabu school again today. Haruto confirmed, explaining that he was still in the middle of a student exchange program. Rie remarked that it was nice, mentioning that the school's impressive buildings made her wish she could visit just once. Haruto chuckled, describing the school's interior as surprisingly old-fashioned, but admitting that he was being treated like royalty there. Smiling, Rie commented that it sounded wonderful for him to experience such a normal school life. Haruto felt touched seeing Rie's bright smile and wholeheartedly agreed with her. He then asked if it was true that she'd be starting middle school that day. She confirmed, mentioning that she still only had memories from elementary school and needed to catch up. Haruto patted her head, assuring her that he would be cheering her on and that they should both do their best, silently promising to never let her feel sadness again. Later, as he walked down a street near Azabu School, he overheard a woman shouting for someone to stop and let her go. A man was gripping her arm, demanding to know if she realized how much money he'd spent on her. Some nearby students began to murmur, recognizing the woman as Malulu, a well-known influencer with over 3 million followers who was set to debut as a singer soon. Haruto glanced back, initially deciding it was none of his business, and continued walking away. Meanwhile, Malulu broke free, scolding the man for ambushing her and teasing him for being so shameless in trying to monopolize her. Enraged, the man warned her that there was a recently discovered dungeon nearby and it could be dangerous, but she continued to run. Malulu only stopped when she heard something unsettling ahead of her. Looking up, she saw a dungeon gate open before her, and to her horror, monsters began emerging. The creatures were imperial centipedes, classified as B-class annihilation-designated monsters, with a subjugation rank of 5, and a recommended raid level of 1,200, leaving her paralyzed with fear. Malulu fell to the ground, paralyzed by fear and crying as the monstrous centipedes advanced. The people nearby were equally horrified, panicking as they questioned why monsters had emerged outside the dungeon. Some speculated that it was one of the migrating species, and chaos erupted as everyone rushed to flee, leaving Malulu alone and trembling in terror. As one of the centipede's heads opened its massive jaws and lunged toward her, the onlookers screamed, convinced she wouldn't survive. Suddenly, Haruto leaped toward the monster. Just as the centipede was about to bite, the ground shattered beneath its head, which had been severed in an instant, sending a spray of green blood everywhere. The crowd was shocked as the monster writhed in pain. Haruto calmly carried Malulu away from the creature. As she opened her eyes, she was stunned to see him holding her. He gently set her down, urging her to escape quickly, and then turned to leave, leaving her speechless. Haruto stopped near the centipede, hesitating. He didn't want to get involved in more troublesome situations, but he knew he'd have trouble sleeping if he allowed these people to be slaughtered. Then, to his surprise, he saw the severed head regenerating, reattaching to the creature's body. He realized the monster had a regeneration ability. At that moment, a group of adventurers arrived. The leader of the group assessed the situation, asking if everyone was okay, and introduced their team as members of the Minato District branch of the Adventurers Guild. Spotting Haruto, they told him to step back, warning that he would be killed if he stayed. One of the adventurers reported to the leader that the monster was a B-class annihilation-designated creature with a subjugation rank of S, requiring a raid level of over 1,000. The leader, visibly concerned, noted that their group's average level was only 80 and doubted they'd stand a chance. Another member suggested signaling the 7 sages for help, but the leader dismissed the idea, shouting that they wouldn't arrive in time. With no other choice, the adventurers braced themselves to fight. Determined to protect the people despite the odds, Haruto silently watched them from a distance. Just then, one of the centipede's heads lunged toward 2 of the adventurers, who took defensive positions despite knowing they were outmatched. Fortunately, a chain materialized, halting the monster's head in midair. It was Haruto, using his stop chain skill. The adventurers, bewildered, wondered aloud if they'd been saved. Haruto, without concern for standing out, activated his space-time magic to tighten his grip on the creature, and then used his quick body skill, propelling himself forward at high speed. Sensing danger, the centipede tilted its head and spewed a toxic liquid at him. Haruto dodged, leaping away just in time, and noticed the ground dissolving beneath the liquid's impact. He quickly deduced that it was a corrosive poison attack and resolved to minimize collateral damage. Suddenly, the monster appeared beneath him, jaws open, and bit down, seemingly cleaving him in half, but Haruto vanished like a projection, shocking the creature. Thanks to his avatar replay skill, he had avoided death, explaining that the version it had struck was merely an echo of himself from 0.3 seconds earlier. He seized the opportunity, swinging his sword in a powerful arc that severed the creature's head with a single strike. The adventurer leader was astounded as the massive head hit the ground, and nearby, Malulu watched in awe. Haruto approached the decapitated head, placing his hand above it. What are your thoughts on the story? Drop a comment below and rate it from 0 to 10. Can't wait to read what you think.